Welcome to the public forum at Timberlane Performing Arts Center Recital Hall to meet the top 3 candidates for the Assistant Superintendent's position. I'm the School District Moderator, Steve Renlett, and I'm going to be moderating this event tonight. This forum is being live streamed so that community members from both Timberlane and Hampstead can watch from home and participate by way of sending email questions for candidates. Those questions can be sent to SAU Public Forum at SAU55.net. Again, that's SAU Public Forum at SAU55.net. The process tonight will be to introduce each candidate, and the time will be allowed for the candidates to share information about him or herself. I will then pose 3 starter questions to each candidate, and then I'll ask the members of the SAU board who are present to offer questions, followed by questions from the audience. And finally, we'll present questions emailed from the public, and each candidate is going to be allotted 60 minutes. So before we get started with the first candidate, I believe Dr. Metzler is going to have a few words about the process.
I thought you were going to have me re-interview for the job. No, it's just a little
7 years ago.
So 7 years ago, we did something similar. So again, first I want to take this opportunity to thank our district moderator, Steve Renlett. Does an outstanding job, and we just had a recount recently, and so there's some additional responsibilities, and we really appreciate all that extra support that he's providing to our 4 towns here in Timberlane, and in this particular instance, in our SAU, which includes Hampstead as well. I'd like to also take this opportunity to thank Dean Zanillo and our HR team that's here, Nancy Lewis-Sal, Melissa Post, Kathy Belcher, for their great job setting this up tonight, as well as the SAU board members are here tonight, and in addition to our screening committee. Just briefly, the process. We put out a posting for this position quite some time ago. We had some really good interest. Some people had called, people had emailed, and applications started to come in. Our HR department had an opportunity to take a look at those resumes, and we sent along to the screening committee, which we believed were the qualified candidates. At that time, they paper screened that group down to what we would consider semifinalists. They had an opportunity to interview those semifinalists, and this evening we have our 3 finalists. So I'd like to congratulate our 3 finalists, 2 are internal candidates, 1 external candidate. The SAU board and members of the public will have an opportunity to get to know the candidates, and then finally later this week I'll have an opportunity to meet with the screening committee. They're going to put all their information together, including the site visits, their interviews personally, some of the information tonight, how they conducted themselves here at a public interview, and they'll have an opportunity. At that time, a decision will be made as to 1, 2, or 3 candidates will be brought forward to the SAU board for consideration, and then we'll see where we are in the process. But that's pretty much just a brief kind of Reader's Digest of the process, where we've been, where we are, and where we hope to go. So again, I thank everybody. I thank the public for tuning in tonight, and I wish all 3 candidates the best of luck. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. So let's get on with the process. Our first candidate is going to be Misty McBriady. Step up to the podium. Ms. McBriady, if you could take a few minutes to tell us about yourself.
Okay. So I'm Misty McBriady. I am currently working as a director of curriculum up in Jaffrey Ringe, New Hampshire, but I have been in this gig for 22 years. I started out in western Maine mountains up near Farmington, Maine, Strong, Maine, in a K-8 school as a 6th through 8th grade science teacher, reading teacher, health teacher, jack of all trades in a small K-8 school in the middle of nowhere. And then I also was a middle school 7th, 8th grade looping teacher, science. I also was a teacher, math, 6th grade math, and I also, at the sort of end of my career as a teacher, before I went into being an administrator, I was, for 3 years, taught a multi-age 7th and 8th grade self-contained classroom for students who really just were not doing well in school. And so that led me into building level administration. I also worked at a public charter school teaching science both at the middle school and high school there. And then I moved into district level leadership. So for the last 7 years I've been at the SAU level as a director of curriculum and instruction. And during that time, I received my doctorate in transformative leadership. Specifically, my passion really is around the structures of school. and getting our kids in a structure of school that really can help them to thrive. Because I really believe our schools need to be customizable and really therapeutic for our kids, especially at this time. We're seeing a pretty huge crisis for our children right now. So I think our schools really need to start looking at how we redesign them so that we can really meet the needs of all kids. So that's a huge passion of mine. And a lot of my work over the last 10 years, especially at the SAU level, has been really helping districts to do that through the strategic design process and to really look at those structural pieces that get in the way of kids and their learning, both social, emotional, and academic. So it's a huge passion, but on a personal note, you know, I grew up on Moosehead Lake in Maine, so I love nature, I love being outdoors, I love all of that stuff. That's really how I renew myself. And I certainly love the Seacoast area, which is where I've been living for the last 15 or so years. So that's sort of what brings me here to, and looking at this, I love the district level leadership. I love supporting systems and systems change. I thrive on challenge, I thrive on change. So this level of work is something that really I'm passionate about and feel like I have a lot of great strengths around. So when I saw this job, I thought it was a good opportunity. I saw Dr. Metzler's goals in the district, and for me, I don't just apply for jobs, I look for jobs where I can be connected. I'm a very kid-centered leader. I believe our mission should always be that, uncompromisingly kid-centered, and that is who I am as a leader. So I'm looking for systems and the ability to work in systems in which that really is your vision.
Thank you. We're going to start out with a couple of questions. What would you consider to be your greatest asset and abilities as a leader, and what areas would you need to further develop?
Okay. Well, I think probably, you know, the number one asset for me, I think, is that I really am uncompromisingly learner-centered. I believe that that is our sole mission in what we do, and I think that, you know, having that passion leads you into having some of those people skills I think are really important. And I really believe that how we connect with each other, how we work together, around that common vision is really important, and it's a real strength of mine to keep us focused on that. And the main thing is the main thing, and that's our kids. And so at the district level, if we don't come to the table with that as our total way that we're doing business, we're going to make it difficult for our kids to be successful. So I think it's incredibly important that at the district level that we're going in making those decisions that are really about kids and what they need to thrive, which means that we have to make sure that our people have what they need to make sure that the kids can thrive. So I think I have a lot of really great strengths and ideas. I would consider myself a disruptive innovator. I like to disrupt class a bit, which also could lead to the bane of my existence sometimes. So sometimes my passion can get the best of me. So I always have to, that's probably the area that I have to work on the most, is not letting my passion get in the way of relationships. Because that's the key, right, is we're a people business. And so our connectedness to each other and our connectedness with kids has to be paramount, or we can never get anything done. And in our day and age of weaponizing words and launching them in social media, I think we have to get even more connected with each other face to face and not use technology as the way we communicate so much in that way. So again, for me, I'm always going to have to be working as a leader at this level on those communication tactics that really help people come together and not be divided. And I think we have to come together when it comes to kids, because they need us.
Excellent, thank you. What would you consider to be your most significant accomplishment in your present or most recent position?
Yeah, so I would say right now, I mean, my most recent position, I think we've made some huge accomplishments. One of the things that I feel is a real strength and something that we've been able to do in my current position, because again, you know, we've been able to bring people together under that uncompromisingly learner-centered vision. So the strategic design process is incredibly important in a community where our most precious resources are kids. And they're our bank account for the future. They're a bank account for our economy and our society. And so how we raise them, and school is an incredibly important role in that, I think that that is a huge part of our accomplishment. And so for me, personally, in getting entrenched in that with the community that I'm working with now, we were able to come to that strategic design. We were able to come to those agreements and say every decision we make is going to be based on this, even if it's hard and it makes some of us cranky. We got to follow this. And so I would say that that's a huge win for us, not without crankiness, of course, but it's a huge win. And because of that, we were able to really inspire our staff, our community, our kids even, to start looking at, you know what, school doesn't have to be drudgery. It can be really flexible. It can be very engaging. It's a place where we learn how to think, not what to think. It's a place where we learn how to figure out ourselves and get strong in who we are so we can go out into the world and thrive. So I feel that beginning process has started us into a really wonderful place that we're going to end up over the years. And that, for me, is a huge win.
Okay. What are your top 3 educational priorities, and how do you see yourself working with the administrative team to implement those priorities?
So I will say this, that I think now especially, and it always, a kid's success in their cognitive being, their academics is always something that's important because those essential content skills are key to ensuring that we have the essential knowledge we need for whatever we're going to do in life. But I really believe right now, especially, that our social emotional health of our children needs to be our #1 priority. They're struggling. We need to, for me, our schools need to be a hub in our community of kids getting that social emotional help. That mental health piece that's really key for them to be able to be learners, to be able to thrive in their growth and development years as well as in their life when they become adults and have to be on their own. So I really feel that has to be a truly big priority. Our job today as educators is different than it was even 15 or 20 years ago. We have a very complex world our children are going out into and living in currently as they're growing up, which they're wired differently. So we can't keep doing the same things we've always done because some of our kids, especially our most marginalized, are falling behind and they're not able to catch up. So for me, that social emotional side of things, that learning that has to occur there to build up those strong self-systems needs to be a huge priority. And we have to put a huge investment in that, both our time, our empathy, and our resources financially, because we'll gain on the other end of that. So for me, with the administrative team, I think that it's just really working together. I have a wonderful relationship currently with my administrative team. I think leaders have to be really tight. We have to be working together. We have to be connected. We have to like each other as people. We have to care about kids all the way. And then we have to really plan on how we're going to navigate and make sure that our people are taken care of. So we have to have really good, wildly important goals that are kid-centered. We all have to put our stuff on the table and be able to rumble and come to some common agreements about what's good for kids, and really care about each other. So for me, it's all about relationships, and we have to really care about each other and work together in that regard.
Thank you. Now I'll extend it to the SAU members. Any questions from the SAU members?
Sure.
I'm Brian Boyle from Atkinson. I'm wondering, in your current capacity or previous capacities, have you had any experience, a reason to be dealing with budgets or facilities?
Yeah, obviously, as a principal, as a director of curriculum, we are, we're dealing with our budgets. We go through the budget season. We plan those budgets. We present those budgets to the board. So certainly, on all of my experience with that at the district level and as a building administrator, looking at things line by line. I'm a fiscal conservative, so I really want to make sure that we're using that money to directly impact students, that we're efficient, that we're really getting a good bang for our buck, and where we invest, we're going to have a good outcome with kids in their social emotional growth and their achievement. And so for me, that's something that I think is really important. We need to make sure that we're really paying attention to where those dollars go. And for me, we need to make sure that we're ultimately filtering as much of it as we can that in places where the kids are going to be directly impacted positively. As far as facilities go, My roles have not been specifically in facilities, though in my current role, my superintendent will ask me to do lots of things that to help him out. So certainly safety committees I've been on around facilities and those kinds of pieces. But I'm a learner, so if that's going to be part of a job, I'm happy to learn it and happy to do what I can to participate in that, because I do think facilities help our children, keep them safe. And when they're in really good facilities, they learn better and they're happier, so they're important.
Anybody else from the SAU? Sarah?
So, I've talked with you a couple of times.
Yes.
But I'm interested to learn more about how you motivate your team toward change. You've talked a lot about your, a change, initiate change. So, your district's gone through a lot. How do you get your team on board and motivate them to accept that change and champion it?
Well, again, I think you have to start by getting everybody together to figure out what's the wisdom in the room, what's the wisdom in the community, what does the community really want. When you try to sell something that's sort of your own personal vision to the community, that's different than the community coming together and putting together a vision, making that a plan, and then figuring out what steps we're going to do to get there. So the initial part of this has to be that we're doing some kind of events, and I mentioned the strategic design event because that was an event where we brought over 100 people, from clergy to business to students at the table, staff at the table, the entire school board at the table, with a facilitator to really look at what do we believe about learners and learning, what do we believe that our community really can get focused in on and rally around. So that's pretty important to do, and if that's not something that's been done, I would come on and say let's try to get some of those pieces in place first, because you don't want to try to sell something that doesn't have a big picture to it, and that isn't about what we're here for. So that's a pretty important first step, and I think that by design gets a lot of people on board in terms of at least the vision, right? You're never going to get around people being cranky, by the way. You just can't. But you really have to get to a place where you're inspiring, but you also have to get to a really good place of communication. People have to understand the why. They have to get the why, and you have to spend way more time with that than you'd want to. You have to communicate more than you ever think you need to, and most of that really does need to be, at this point, face-to-face. I always say to people, it's hard to hate people up close, move in, right? It needs to be, we need to be looking at each other face-to-face, we need to talk about each other, and we need to make sure that we're really understanding what's truly going on and why a change needs to occur. And then the how part becomes easier, because then we can bring people together, get the collective wisdom in the room. What does everybody think might be a way to get to that place? Let's talk about that. Let's make a plan. Let's communicate that plan. Even with all that said, though, you're still going to have people that are upset. So you have to, again, just continue to work through that. I always believe that the crankiest person, if you sit down and have coffee with them and really talk this out, that eventually you can come to a place where you can at least agree to disagree, but you can see where there is a good reason why. But again, that just takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and that really never ends. But you can never give up on that and sort of close your door and stay in the ivory tower and hope it goes away, because it won't. It'll get worse. So it's important that you maintain those kinds of communication channels always as much as possible. And that's really a collective effort. It's not one person's effort. But and I really believe that communication has to be, we're sitting next to each other. We don't need to shame and blame each other. Let's stop screaming at each other and let's look about what the deal is. The kids are our purpose. And what are we doing to make sure that their growth and development is healthy and strong, and they're going to be able to thrive both in their school lives as well as their lives outside of school and into their adulthood. And if we're always working towards that common vision, even if we don't agree, I think we can at least get along.
Thank you. Yes, Sue?
Hi, Christy. I'm Sue Sherman. I'm from
Hi.
Plasto. I was hit by the quote you just said, leaders need to work together.
Yeah.
And so I was hoping that you could give me a real life, not hypothetical time, but a real situation you've been involved in where you felt that because the leaders worked together, it made a positive change for kids.
Well, and I will tell you right now in my current job, and those people that came to the site visit probably can tell you, my entire administrative team was in that room. We really like each other. We are together around a common vision. We are making small, digestible steps. We problem solve together. When things don't go well or don't go the way we thought they would go, we come back to the table, we talk it through. We throw our ideas on the table. We share what's working, we share what doesn't work, and what we need to do to change it. When we're cranky with each other, we're okay, we can rumble, but we can leave liking each other. And I will tell you, of all the years that I have worked in education, right now my current administrative team is just amazing, and we are doing that. And that is the thing that I hope to always bring to the table when I come on as an administrative team, that I am someone that can bring things to the table, help make things better, help us work together. I will be strong in my beliefs. I will stand up for what I believe in, and I won't waver on that, but I also can compromise. I can say, all right, well, if that's not the idea we're going to use, let's try yours. We'll get on it. I won't sabotage it on you. I won't have meetings after the meetings. I won't back channel you. Let's give it a try. And if it doesn't work, then we'll try the other ideas that are on the table. That's how we operate. And I can tell you that my administrative team would tell you that right now. And it's powerful because we do get a lot done. Though change in education is like moving a glacier, it doesn't always feel that way, but we can make small steps toward moving the boulder over time.
Anybody else?
Hi, Jen Silva from Atkinson. I had one question, but I think you kind of answered it in that comment, so I'll go in a different direction. I heard you speak a lot about investment in students to help prop up those who may be falling behind, but I'm curious, how do you support those who are maybe excelling and looking for more?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And again, that's my passion, because I really believe in customized learning. And it's a structural problem why we can't meet all kids' needs right now. Because right now, our kids are in a structure that forces them to move through a system in the same way, in the same time frames, doing the same things. So if we don't start looking at structural pieces around that, because no one teacher can actually make that happen on their own. And so if teachers are not in a structural system in which they can share the load with each other, with technology, with parents, with community, and we can't have the flexible time frames in which students that really are ready to learn higher level learning goals, while others that have achievement gaps can get their needs met. Our structural system makes that very difficult. It's actually a barrier. And so we have to start to problem solve that, because it's not about plowing through a textbook series on time and fast. That's not actually rigor. Rigor comes with high levels of thinking and complex tasks that get kids into the community doing high levels of thinking and internships and extended learning opportunities. It's not about grouping kids who we think can go faster in the same group. It's about getting kids to do complex things, which requires time, requires flexibility in time, and requires us all to work together collectively, not just teachers together, but community together, because there's a lot of resources in the community. So for me, when we talk about those kids who might have some places they excel, I don't want to get in the way of that. I want to see concurrent enrollment courses at the high school in huge amounts, because we have a lot of kids who are ready for college in their junior year of high school. There's no reason they couldn't get a year or two under their belt before they even leave us. There's a cost benefit to parents with that, and kids can be in those types of courses and have a transcript and really sets them up for college. So, you know, on all ends of the spectrum, there's lots of different ways in which we can meet those needs. But when we operate from a place where we're building the talents up in all children, and that's the place that we operate, then we then start to expand what we think is important in human intellect. We start expanding the different opportunities that we can offer kids outside of the traditional pathways. We start looking at customized pathways and choice and voice in where I go. Those are the ways in which we get all kids engaged. From whether I'm struggling at some basic things to I'm ready for some really advanced types of learning and experiences. So what I would say to you is this, it's structural, and we got to start looking at those structures so that we can have the capacity to be able to do those things.
Anybody else from the SAU?
Kind of building off of what you were just talking about, how do you support your teachers to be empowered and have the tools necessary to provide that type of instruction for all learners?
So we have to do a lot better job structurally too with professional learning. If you look at, and we talk a lot about education needing to be a business model, and that's great, but we can't say that only when it's convenient to us. Business models, they have a lot of training for their people. They know that training is huge in order to be adaptable, creative, innovative, entrepreneurial, and they infuse a lot of money into their people to get that training, and it's embedded. It's not a workshop here and there, hit or miss. It's embedded. They make sure that their people have those trainings and the ability to work together and the time to work together. They don't throw them into the job world in their companies and say, figure it out, right? And we kind of do that often to teachers. So we need to have a lot better way of providing our teachers with training. So in my current district, we really worked hard on some structural pieces around that. Paying teachers to come in over the summer to get some really in-depth types of training that would really help them to understand how to work in a customized way, even differentiate better in the classroom to serve some of the needs while we're still kind of in a system that gets in the way of sharing the load better. Job-embedded professional development throughout the year. Lots of supports both between colleagues and from the district level types of professional development. It's really important that teachers have a lot of professional development that's in tandem with each other and not all over the place, because we want our teachers to have a common language. We want them to all understand learning and motivation the same way. So it's really important that there's that piece. And then we have to allow some customized structures for PD as well, because not everybody needs the same thing. So again, you look at new teachers, they need something very different than a teacher that might have been in this gig for 20 years. So we have to have some other structures underlying that give teachers the ability to have different ways to get to their learning based on their own personal goals as well. So it's multifaceted there too. We should be doing with our teachers what we're saying we want to do with our kids, right? So we have to invest more in that. Our budget lines when it comes to teachers getting training are a little too low in my opinion. We got to get more in there so that those teachers have more. I'd be fighting for more days for teachers to have PD days without kids so that they have more consistent time frames as well to plan and learn together. Once they have that, you got to give teachers a lot of empowerment. Once they have a mastery of basic skills around teaching, learning, and motivation, they got to have a lot of empowerment to create, innovate, and be entrepreneurial. So that, again, has to be embedded in the schedule. I haven't got there with the time frames yet. Still working on that. It's a really complex problem. And it takes a lot of people to think about that. But it's really key. And if we're going to say we're going to operate like a business, we got to be like a business. And that means that we got to get our people to feel that they are able to do. Because the #1 achievement factor for students is teacher effectiveness and efficacy. And if they don't feel that they're capable or they don't feel like they have enough resources, they're not going to be able to do what we want them to do for kids. So it's a huge priority for me.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the SAU?
Yeah.
Before you, in the middle of the conversation, you were saying that you're a disruptive innovator, right? Can you speak more to that, what that means to you, and if you have an example you haven't already spoken to, and how that worked in the community?
Sure. And disruptive innovators will have people that love them and people who hate them, okay? So, it's just how it is. But one of the things that I will tell you is that, and this is something I'm really proud of, and I actually have been asked to kind of help out with Dr. Marzano and his new consulting around what we call empower learning. And he's one of our big guys in this field, and he's really helping us figure out customized learning, competency-based education, performance-based learning, and the transformative technologies that really support that. And that has been, like I said, that's my whole doctoral work, and it's so powerful when we get to a structural system where we can do this. So one district, the district before the one I work in now, we were able to bring the Empower Learning system on, and it's a learning management system that really is a backbone structure for learning progression curriculum that allows us to do a lot of things in terms of tracking student learning in a customized way. That is such a different lifestyle than what we're used to right now, okay? And so when we change the lifestyle in our way of doing business in an organization, we're disrupting class. We're changing the day-to-day of how we operate. So to get to a new place in which we can operate with a better workflow, a more kid-centered place that is getting kids to be looking at themselves against their golf course, not against each other, which is huge, and it allows us to really then get to what we really need to do, which is working with kids day in and day out to build up their skills, both academic and social emotionally, and track them in a way that allows them to get the time they need to learn. None of us work on the same time frames in the same ways when it comes to learning, and when we're in our developmental phases as children through early adulthood, we need flexibility. We need time, especially the more complex the tasks, the more complex the learning. So, and we don't all learn in the same ways in the same time frames. That's just neuroscience 101. So we have to have structures that allow for that to be able to happen without teachers wanting to jump off a cliff, right? So those types of systems that are available now, learning management systems like Empower, allow for us to do that. That is a disruptive innovation. It's going to change our field when we start to move those things into place, because it's going to move us out of traditional, everyone does things in the same way in the same time frame, to an ability to not have to do it that way. So we've disrupted now. Make sense?
Anybody else from the SAU? Anybody from the audience have a question? Well, you're lucky because I got one from the general public.
All right.
This was sent in. What qualities do you look for when hiring an administrator, and how would you involve staff in the hiring process?
Okay, so I think I've probably made this clear, but if I haven't, uncompromisingly learner-centered would be number one, okay? Because if you don't believe that all children can learn, no matter where they come from, no matter how marginalized they are, then you're not going to lead that, and you're not going to be able to support your teachers in that. So to me, uncompromising learner-centered has to be what I am about, or as a leader. And so after that, of course, I want somebody who is willing to, is able to give good feedback in a way that doesn't shame and blame. We got to be able to sit next to each other. None of us are infallible. We make mistakes, we try things, it doesn't work out, we got to reflect. I want somebody that can give good feedback, can help people build their capacity to be able to thrive in what they're doing for work. Success breeds success. I want to be a leader, and I want to work with leaders who want that. So that would be a huge part of being able to be collaborative with, your community, your parents, your teachers. It's really key that we look at it from that way, that we build relationships, not break them apart. So that would be a really important two things for me. Everything else I think you can learn pretty quickly, but those we got to have. In terms of involving, I think you definitely need to get the stakeholders that are going to be affected by what that leader does in the room, a representative group, so that they can have a say and see, just like you're doing here, right, what's this person about, what qualities. I think it's really important to get the survey of the group, both the community, internal and external people. What qualities are they looking for, so that can be part of a matrices that whomever's on the hiring committee, which should represent the stakeholder groups, can really use as a filter. And then ultimately, let that person have a shot at sharing their story and helping you understand what they're about.
Thank you. Any other questions? If you could either step up to a mic, if you could hand her one of the cordless, but if you could speak in, Dean's having a hard time picking up the question, so.
Okay, this gives me way too much power. Coral
You
Hampe,
have to give it
Danville.
back.
No. Coral Hampy, Danville, and on the search committee.
Uh-huh.
Something we are facing in this district is a shortage of substitute teachers.
Everywhere we are.
Okay, I was going to say, do you have any innovative ideas that could get people in the door, that could get them working with us to continue a day at school?
Well, I'm gonna say this too. Part of the sub issue, I think, too, for a lot of people, I know in the district that I'm in right now, I don't have an innovative solution for that. I wish I did, because we just solved it where I am at right now. I will tell you that pay is a huge issue. It's really hard to get subs to come in when you're only paying them $50-$60 for the day. So you want to think about that. I mean, we had to kind of think about how we were going to budget that. The other thing, too, that we are looking into and has had success in other places is hiring some people full-time to be subs, and then they can just go around the district. That's been another solution that people have found has worked. Even if you had a sub per building that was just paid for full-time and had a full-time job and they just bopped around, that's also been a solution. The other thing that we found that's been working in our crisis, because in crisis you figure things out, right? Is we are paying our teachers extra to take their prep to sub for classes, so that a classroom could be covered by a certified teacher. They get paid extra, and they can start covering some of those classes. So I think some of the solutions might be multifaceted, not one-shot wonders. But those are some things that I think have started to work in the sub-crisis, but you're not alone. We're having the issue everywhere.
I have another question, and you've done this through your introduction and also through some of them, but a person who wasn't able to attend, they'd like to have your top 2 strengths, and if you could list your 2 weaknesses.
Okay. I think, like I said, my top 2 strengths is I really, I believe in people. I'm a kid-centered leader, and I think that is the number 1 strength I have, is that I have a huge passion for kids. And I said in my interview, and I'll say it here, don't hire me if you want me to make adult-driven decisions at the expense of them, because I won't. I think that we have to take that stand if we're going to be leaders or working with kids. We have to put them first. So I do think that that's a huge strength of mine, although it can be the bane of my existence as well. That piece, I think I'm also an incredibly collaborative person. I've been through a lot of stuff in my life, and I think that, when we are doing things that create hate and discontent, rather than coming from a place of compassion and empathy and understanding and forgiveness, that we don't work well together. So I bring to the table that. I bring to the table a lot of empathy. And I don't think it's necessary to sling mud. I think it's necessary to listen. I think it's necessary to ask really good questions. I'm a qualitative researcher. I believe in the data in the soul. Okay, so we need to find out what people's stories are, and we need to figure out why they're thinking what they're thinking, and then help them come to a common place together. I think that's a really good strength that I have. But again, my weakness is also sort of a yin and the yang. Okay, my passion comes with kids. And so sometimes I don't always operate the way I should with adults because I get frustrated. And I'll be honest about that. And so, I have to say sorry like everyone else and try to build that relationship. But because of that, I have to also pay attention and work really hard to make sure that I'm not using my words as weapons, and that I'm being compassionate and recognizing that none of us are perfect, and that we all come to the table wanting to do well. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, geez, I hope I do awful today. We all prefer to do well. That's our goal. And so when we come to the table with that mindset, we can be better as people, we can be better in collaborating with each other, and we certainly will do better things for kids in that regard. So, and then, I guess another weakness is sometimes I work way more than I should, and I need to get that work-life balance thing under my belt, because I tend to put my heart and soul into this job, and sometimes that often is at my own demise. So I do need to work on that.
Thank you. I do have another question. How do you envision your role as assistant superintendent implementing new practices or programs with staff, students, and other stakeholders at the school level?
I see myself as a learning facilitator and a coach, someone who is going to just be there to figure out what do you need. If this is the vision, if this is what we all have said we believe is really important to do, then my role is to get things out of your way, to support you through coaching, to support you through resources, to get money if you need money, get time if you need time, be there for you personally. In my current role right now, I am in the classrooms all the time, and I don't think those of us who are at the SAU level should be hiding out. We need to get in the schools, we need to know what's going on in there, and we need to be known. We need to let people know we care about them, and that we're going to be there for them. So, you know, there's a lot of, a lot of times I say to people in my current role, which would probably be what I would be like in a role like this, because this is just what I do, is I tend to be very therapeutic. I like to listen to people and their stories and try to help them to figure out how to get through whatever it is they're trying to get through, so they can come out on the other side and be successful. So I see that as the number one role. There's lots of things in this role that are managerial, that have nothing to do with kids, that just have to do with making sure systems work the way they're supposed to. I'm super organized and type A, so those things won't be hard. The people stuff is what's mostly important, and it's the hardest part of the job. And it's something that I actually really enjoy the challenge of. Not successful at it all the time, but it is, you know, a huge part of the job. The people part of the job is the most significant part of it. And so for me, that's the place I'm going to put a lot of energy.
Thank you. Any other? You're going to have to come down to the mic, sir, please.
Dr. Clifton Dancy, I'm the Technology Director in Hampstead.
Hi.
And I want to follow up on that question that was just there. As you know, these are two separate districts.
I do.
With very unique identities.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you plan to do all that you just said for two separate and still support them and maintain their unique identities?
One step at a time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's, you know, well, again, it's just one of those things where you have to get super organized. I am super organized. You have to make it a legitimate thing you're going to do. I have to carve time in my calendar to say, I'm going to be at Hampstead right now. I'm going to be here then. I'm going to be at this school then. I have to get that in my way of being. Though those plans change and things erupt and crises happen and all of that, but if you make it as part of your overall structure of your organization and workflow, when the things erupt and you have to reschedule, it's not a big deal, but you have to make it a part of your pattern. And you know, and if I want to make sure it happens, I'll make sure it happens, right? There might be times in which I have a project I got to get done, and I got to close the door for a couple of days and get her done. But I'm going to make the real conscious effort to have that be a scheduled time weekly to meet with the building leaders, scheduled time to be able to be available to teachers. It just has to do, I have to do that. It has to be part of my job if I'm going to be successful. People have to know me.
Thank you. Another question, have you used, developed, or revised a personnel evaluation system for certificated personnel and non-certificated personnel?
Yes, many of them actually. So let's see, I've been trained in Marzano model. I have used Danielson for many, many years in several districts. I have designed with an administrative team a wholly different model. I've been trained in Skill for Teacher, Rebus. So teacher evaluation actually is another kind of passion of mine, because I think that, you know, we get accused a lot of accountability. And I think that we need to have an effective way to give teachers feedback. That just like kids, they need lots of formative feedback. So the evaluation models have to not be threatening, but still hold us accountable, but not be threatening, because we need, feedback is king. Feedback is what we all need to learn. We know it's the second achievement factor for all learners is formative feedback. So the evaluation systems have to be a tool that allows us to give lots of good feedback so that we can build capacity in our staff. So all the evaluation systems tend to have similar characteristics, and there are very clear indicators no matter what evaluation system you use that are key to being an effective teacher with efficacy. We know what those things are. And so then it's really developing good relationships between the evaluators and the teachers, between teachers and giving them each other feedback. And then in my role, it's just really to support all those people and being able to give each other good feedback. And helping to get that, stay organized and effective in the practice. So yes, it almost was my dissertation topic, but I went someplace else because that began to bore me.
Okay, thank you. Who has most influenced you to become an educator and an administrator, and how did they influence you?
Well, I think, to be honest, although this is a bit cliche, it really was some amazing teachers that got me interested in being a teacher. But one of the biggest factors in my life for becoming a teacher, beyond having good teachers, is that I was not good at school. The joke in my house, my father's a chief engineer, and he was very good at math. I was not, but he was a seaman, so he was only home 6 months out of the year, and I used to tell people, I'm only good at math 6 months out of the year, because my dad's home, right? And so a huge amount of, and I was the little kid who'd take the worksheets and shove them in hollow logs at recess, because I just couldn't do it. So I was not good at school. I came from a great family. We had plenty of resources as a family, but I just didn't do school well. And so I became a teacher because of that, more so than anything. And then I saw the power in how powerful it was for a teacher to say, I'm not going to give you that due date because you need more time with that. I'm going to let you have extra time, and I'm going to assess you when I know you're ready. You and I need more time with this together. Those teachers affected me huge, and I knew that and I became a math and science teacher, surprisingly, because I actually was really good at it. I just wasn't instructed in a way that made sense to my brain. So it was a huge reason why I became a teacher. I became a leader because I wanted to impact more people, more children. From the classroom, I could impact many, but I knew I could impact a whole lot more if I was a leader helping teachers to be able to be effective with kids. So my drive to become a leader was actually that, though, again, I had some incredibly great mentors who helped me through that leadership piece and who inspired me to be a leader as well. There's always people in your life. And I think probably a couple of people that really made a huge difference in my life, just professional people, was Dr. Ann Davies. Dr. Marzano really, Dr. Bob is a huge person in my life that has really impacted me. And Dr. Ross Green, who did a lot of work with explosive children and collaborative problem solving. Those people have really impacted my thought process about children and the strategies that we can use that can impact all kids in positive ways if we just look at them and not dehumanize them and shame and blame them. That they need to have their needs met, and when they do, they're going to thrive. And so those people really, both as a teacher and an administrator, really influenced my decisions on that.
Thank you. Another question, how would you initiate curriculum change?
That's all I've been doing for the last 7 years. Good, bad, and indifferent of that. Well, first of all, you have to, again, I've said this before, and I have not always done this well, but I've learned and are doing it well, better now. You have to get the sense of urgency and the why curriculum has to change. You also have to know that there's a different definition today about curriculum, and that word tends to have a lot of baggage. In my thinking and many researchers' thinking, curriculum is really about what are the instructional goals in content, in thinking skills, and habits of mind that we want the kids to be able to master. And what are the thinking and learning strategies that our kids need in order to be able to go into any situation, complex or not, and be successful? So curriculum, foundationally, is a set of learning progressions for those things. It's not the stuff we have kids do on time. It's not the textbook series or the resources or the programs. What do we want kids to learn? What are the declarative and procedural knowledge? What are the thinking skills that they need for life? And to be able to do these tasks that ultimately we want them to do. That's the curriculum part. So we have to have a sense of urgency of why we need to shift our structure of curriculum. We can't keep buying programs and putting them on teachers and say, do this program and then we'll get kids to meet the standards. We actually have to have teachers collectively unpack those standards, figure out the essential declarative and procedural knowledge, and by the way, you can't meet everything in the standards. Dr. Marzano has done all of that research. We need 25 years of school to master all of that. So we have to figure out what the essential is. And then we give it to the teachers to say, all right, this is what we're saying, we agreed upon, and in this last district, I brought every single teacher to the table. This was not committee work, it can't be, because every teacher has to unpack those standards to understand what they have to instruct to. So this can't be done by somebody else. Everybody has to be a part of it. We get those in place, that structure, and then we allow teachers to create and innovate. Take those essential instructional goals and now create experiences that will engage students in that learning. Think about how you're going to plan for the time frames that children need to get to those thinking skills and to get to that declarative and procedural knowledge, to mastery. Not coverage on time and stuff we have kids do on time, because that's killing their love for learning, by the way. And then we allow teachers to go for it because they're brilliant, they're creative, they're innovative. Give them the time to do that. What's non-negotiable is what they have to learn. What's totally negotiable is how they get there, how long it takes them, and the fun experiences you put together for kids to experience that. So for me, that's the conditions I want teachers in when it comes to curriculum. We'll get better outcomes.
Okay, another one. In your experience, what's the key to developing a good team?
Relationships, right? We can't, that is the key, really. Organization and all that stuff comes, but we have to like each other. We have to have a common vision. We have to be kind to each other. We have to disagree with civility. If we are not going to do that, we're not going to get along and we're going to get nothing done. And kids are going to suffer for that, by the way, because we're not going to have any actions that are going to impact them positively. So we have to really come together and get to know each other as people. We have to be able to listen to both of the ideas, but we also have to come to a common agreement that kids and the decisions we make are going to affect them positively, or we're not going to do it. And if we can come to that agreement, then all the other pieces will fall into play. We can come up with plans. We can figure out what's digestible in the process to move something or change something together, and the timelines it takes and the resources it takes and the training it takes. But we still have to come to that common place of what do we all believe, and then we have to get along. We have to like each other.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Dillard Collins, the principal.
Hi, Dillard.
Yes, I got to meet you last week at your school.
Yes.
I heard your conversation about qualitative research being your background. We live in an age where we need some way of quantifying that quality. So I guess the question is, if you walk in, and I'll just throw it right out, you've got some wonderful elementary, middle schools here, lots of accolades for this district in many ways. I can speak for both districts. There's a lot of quality going on. How would you walk in and measure whether the quality is where it needs to be? What would you be looking for in our schools? Real specific to our schools.
Specific to your schools, right.
Yes.
So first of all, I think, for me, if I were going to be, for example, doing a needs assessment to see what our assessment practices are, which I think is sort of what you're asking is, what does the assessment look like, and what does valid, reliable, and high-quality assessment look like? Beyond our state standardized testing and our diagnostic assessment tools, which are not built by us, and have their uses, but the most powerful assessment tools are the ones built in the classroom. The formative and summative assessments that teachers build, that they give students to see if their instruction worked in the day-to-day, week-to-week time frames. Those diagnostic assessment tools, the quantitative diagnostic ones, both, like NWAs or Ames-Webbs or whatever you're using, STARS, whatever those tools are, that match up with what is going to be tested on a state standardized test. Those are measurements of at the end of the line, and is our system working? That doesn't tell a teacher necessarily discreetly if their instruction worked, though. So that means that we have to make sure that we have a really clear criterion for what a valid and reliable formative and summative assessment looks like at the classroom level. So the first thing that I would do is really look and see what the teachers are actually giving for assessments. I'd ask for some artifacts around that, and I'd want to take a look and see what those are. The criterion for valid and reliable assessments is pretty simple. We have to make sure that the assessment is built for the appropriate learning target that we are assessing. So if it's declarative knowledge, there's very different assessments that we give than if it's procedural knowledge, because the strategies kids need and what the instruction they need are different for both of those types of knowledge. Very different also in the complex thinking that kids have to do, and we assess those in different ways. So knowing and understanding the type of knowledge is really key. The next thing is what the actual goal or instructional goal is asking for thinking skills. So we have to match up the assessment type with the level of complex thinking that is required. So my assessment looks very different if it's retrieval than if it's using knowledge meaningfully. I gotta be doing performance tests if I'm gonna be at the using knowledge and analyzing knowledge level of thinking. Computers can actually assess retrieval and comprehension better than we can, so we might as well use those tools. But the higher levels of reasoning need to be at the performance test level, where we're having conversations and doing observations. And those actually need to be more often than anything else. With formative assessments versus summative, formative is descriptive specific feedback based on success criterion. So if I'm giving a student a task, I should have success criterion for that, and my feedback needs to be given around that. I'm not going to quantify my student at that point because I want them to actually keep improving because they're not at the summation yet. I got to see if my instruction's working and that they're on pace, but we're not at the end of the line yet. So that's really, we have to have both of those things. Summative should be less than formative, actually, because formative actually gets us better achievement than summative all the time. The minute we quantify, we stop learning. It's the end of the line. So we want to make sure we're keeping those two things very balanced. So when I'm looking in a classroom, I want to see that balance. I want to see that kids get really clear success criterion so that they know exactly what the task is asking for, and it's very much related to a learning goal, and that task match what that learning goal is asking for. That's really the simplest part of what it looks like when assessments are valid and reliable. And so when I walk into a classroom, those are the things that I'm looking for, and if I don't see that that's really a prevalent way of doing business, then that's really a key piece of professional development that we need to start planning on. Does that answer your question?
Sure. Ms. McBride, thank you very much. You have about 4 minutes for a closing statement, if you'd like.
Okay. Well, I do want to thank you all for letting me come here. So no matter the turnout, I appreciate getting to this level and getting to talk to you, so I very much appreciate it. The thought of working here is very exciting to me, and I'm excited to get back to the Seacoast, which is where my home is. I'm often all week long away from my family during the week, where I am right now, so getting back to them is really what I'm looking to do, so this is very exciting. And, you know, I think that your district has a huge amount of potential, and it's really clear that you all care deeply about kids, and you have a lot of things that you want to get accomplished. So, you know, I hope that I can come to work with you, but if not, thank you very much, and I appreciate all of your time.
Thank you very much.
All right. Take care.
Our next candidate is Christy Michaud. Ms. Michaud, if you want to come on up to the podium. Good evening. Thank you. Ms. Michaud, if you could take a few minutes to tell us about yourself.
All right. Now, if I could, I just would like to take a moment to thank both the Hampstead and the Timberlane communities for coming together this evening. Also to thank the teachers and staff, administrators that are here this evening, Dr. Metzler and the SAU board for having me. Thank you. I know that the decision of selecting your new assistant superintendent of schools is not one that you take lightly. It's important, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening and to talk with you about my candidacy. So to begin, my name is Christy Michaud. I am currently the Executive Director of Data Assessment and Accountability for the Timberlane Regional School District. I am an accomplished educator of over 20 years experience, and my leadership experience actually began early and in probably what you might find an unusual way. So 25 years ago, I was a senior in high school, and I had an opportunity to apply for and was hired to be a member of a 12-person member of a management team at a local hospital. The local hospital where I had worked throughout high school, so it gave me great pride to put myself out there and to have been hired as part of this management group. I served full-time following my senior year and throughout college. My responsibilities were vast for such a young person. I was involved with hiring and training. I worked with teams to write operational procedures. At the time, we were looking at 2 hospitals that were merging, and to be part of that at just 18 years old was actually a great honor for me. Worked full-time while I went to school full-time. Went to school full-time at a local teaching college in Manchester, New Hampshire, and believe it or not, in just 3.5 years, I graduated from Notre Dame College with my undergraduate degree and began my teaching career in January of 1998. As a classroom teacher, I taught multiple grade levels at the elementary level. I was a teacher leader right away in the elementary school that I served in. Was able to bring some of my experiences from having worked as part of the management team at the local hospital into my career as a teacher. And so during that time, it was working towards my master's in instructional technology. So I had the opportunity to train and work with my colleagues to bring instructional technology into classrooms. It was also a time where we were doing a lot of assessing of students, but assessment and data was something that teachers weren't comfortable with during that time. And so oftentimes what was happening was data and assessment was just kind of being tucked into a drawer. I had a lot of interest in how we could better use the assessment data that we were acquiring to better meet the needs of students. And so during my time as an elementary classroom teacher, I was able to work with my teams and my colleagues to improve the way we were targeting instruction for students. So I was an elementary teacher for 12 years, and then I moved on to be a building level administrator and a school principal, both in the Windham school districts and the Manchester school districts. Lots of great accomplishments and challenges that went along with being a school building level administrator. Sorry, a wee bit nervous. I'm going to take a sip of my water. But mostly grateful and excited to be here. So as a school principal and assistant principal and principal, I had an opportunity to work with our teams to develop a comprehensive RTI model. For those of you who are familiar with the term, RTI is a multi-tiered system that allows us to ensure all students have access to curriculum, all students have access to learning opportunities, and those students who require additional support or students that are for those that might be struggling or for students who might be accelerated. A multi-tiered system allows us to put some supports in place for students over and above what all students get at the bottom or the core tier. And so that particular model that we developed at Golden Brook School got lots of attention. We were having local school districts call, ask if they could come visit. They were asking about what tools we were using to screen students, how we were identifying what students needed, and they wanted to know about the work that we were doing to provide students with those real specific and targeted learning opportunities, especially those that went over and above the core that all students were getting. Also, another piece that I'll share with you, during my time as a school principal, I also was part of building a 10 classroom addition on the backside of Golden Brook School. Wyndham School District was probably one of the last school districts to acquire public kindergarten, and if you build it, they will come. We had a school that went from, when I joined that school as an assistant principal, we were somewhere around just about a little over 400 students, and by the time that I had moved on from Golden Brook School, we were at about 700 students. And we were holding 12 sections of morning and afternoon kindergarten. So the building addition was something that I very much enjoyed working through. That from the pieces of working with the community and communicating why we were in need of the building addition, speaking about our space constraints and those types of things. That part was as enjoyable as working with the owner's rep and designing what those classrooms would look like. And 6 years later, I came here to Timberlane. And over the last 4 years here in Timberlane, my experiences as a systems level leader, I feel have prepared me for the assistant superintendency. I came here to Timberlane with career aspirations to work at the central office, to work pre-K all the way up through grade 12, to continue working with teachers, to work with administrators, to work with families and parents. All of that I've been afforded opportunities to do while here in Timberlane. In fact, many of my responsibilities in much of my role has actually mirrored the role of assistant superintendent. I have worked very closely with Dr. Wilson. In fact, Dr. Wilson and I work together in Windham, and we've been working very closely together here in SAU55 as well. So in advancing the goals and the mission of public education has given me great pride, and I'm hoping that as we get started with some questions here this evening, I'll be able to share some additional examples with you.
All right, we'll jump right into it. What are some of the, excuse me, what are some of the things that a new assistant superintendent can do to raise the level of expectations of other administrative, teaching staff, and students?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something that we do continuously in our roles as system level leaders. And I find that one of the crucial pieces of continuous improvement and work to raise those expectations and to reach those high level of those high standards is really the work through strategic planning and goal setting. As you know, as many of you know, we have a new strategic plan in the Timberlane Regional School District, and I was part of the subcommittee for academics, 21st century learning, and we developed a 5-year plan that is extremely comprehensive. And sometimes I say, wow, because it really is just, has a lot of meat to it, and it's some great work that we'll see over the next 5 years. Before that, or I should say in addition to the strategic planning work, we've done a lot of work in our schools around goal setting. When I came on board in Timberlane, I worked very closely with the schools, with administrators, and district-wide to develop goals around our needs. And that's really what goal setting is about, is really looking at our data, looking at and doing needs assessments, talking to people, and figuring out where can we advance, where is the data telling us there's room for improvement. And the reality in education is that there's always room for improvement, and probably everywhere, and not just education. But and that's how we develop our goals. We write smart, measurable goals that are realistic. They're time-bound. They're very specific. In fact, if I have any of my principals here in the audience, they'll tell you that we spend a lot of time making them specific. And the reason for that is because in addition to writing your goals, you've got to be able to monitor your progress. You've got to be able to go back to those goals and say, what is it that we said we were going to do? What are we actually doing? What have we put in place? And what result, what impact are these actions actually having on such things as improving academic achievement, in terms of other things such as providing professional learning opportunities to staff, maybe improving overall attendance. Whatever those goals might be, we're writing those goals with very specific objectives in mind and taking the time necessary to monitor our progress. Make sure that what we said we were going to do is what we're doing, and it's having the impact and the result that we're looking for.
Thank you. What would you consider to be your greatest asset and ability as a leader, and what areas would you need to further develop?
I would consider myself a visionary leader, a collaborative leader. I'm a good communicator, supportive. These are assets that I have developed, as I shared with you, from a very young age, and something that I've worked to refine and continue to develop, right? So I always say none of us have ever arrived, right? We're always growing and improving in our skill sets. When it comes to work that I would need to perhaps continue to develop, I would say in all of those areas. I want to continue the work with our administrators and our teachers and our families. I look forward, with the opportunity to be your next assistant superintendent, I look forward to the opportunities to work closer with the board. I know each and every one of our board members comes to serve their community, and you have very specific ideas and goals in mind. And so it's important for me, I feel, to be a leader that could sit and really listen and understand those goals, understand the concerns, and work together with our board members and our communities and our schools to really meet those goals and achieve at that high level that we expect of our school districts.
Thank you. Third question, identify one of the innovative programs or practice that you have implemented with multiple teacher and stakeholder involvement. Explain a little about the specific program or the practice in the process of the implementation and your leadership style.
All right. So what comes to mind is something I am super excited about because it's actually coming to fruition now, and that is last spring. We had an opportunity to write a competitive grant. What we learned was that the state was offering somewhere around $1 million and was offering to school districts for writing grants that were innovative, that were specific to advancing STEM education in schools, developing health and wellness for our students. We were also, the qualifications for the grant also were very specific to social and emotional learning and how we were going to improve and advance that in our school districts. And so you had, so as a grant writing team, which consisted of many stakeholders throughout the district, we came together And we reviewed all the possibilities for writing this grant, and we came to the conclusion that we were going to go, you know, what do they say? Go big or go home, or whatever, whatever it is. And we did. We wrote and secured a $92,000 grant. So when you think about throughout our state, if there was about $1 million that was being shared for the Timberlane Regional School District to secure a $92,000 grant was an honor, and it was a privilege to help to lead and facilitate the work of that grant writing team, and to finally be able to implement. So let me tell you a little bit about the implementation. So we decided we would write a grant that was comprehensive. We wanted to be able to provide students with STEM opportunities in the elementary schools, but we also wanted to figure out how we could combine the learning opportunities from of the students in the elementary schools and combine with the expertise of our content experts, our science teachers, both at the middle school and at the high school level. And so what we've actually developed are after-school science camps at each one of our elementary schools. Our science camps are run by our teachers. We've got guidance counselors that are actually serving multiple purposes. They're helping to support some of the social emotional needs of students that might be part of that camp, and that are learning things like body regulation and whatnot. So our guidance counselors are part of those science camps. We've got classroom teachers, elementary classroom teachers that have shown great interest in advancing the work of science within our elementary schools. But we were also able to bring on board some science teachers from the science department at the middle school and at the high school to be part of this work as well. So in addition to that $92,000 going towards the STEM science camps, we are also able to we were trying to figure out how we could really strengthen social and emotional development, and again, trying to combine the stakeholders and children and teachers from multiple schools. And so one of the projects that is just getting started now, we're working very closely with facilities as well as the secondary schools, is that we're adding on to the ropes course up at the middle school. That's going to give children multiple opportunities to actually practice some of the things that they're learning in the science camp. When you think about physics and you think about measurements and various tools and things that they're using, they're going to put those things into practice when they get a chance to visit the ropes course. And I guess the third piece of this comprehensive grant was really to look at systems of care. And the systems of care is assessing the needs in each of our schools and figuring out the best practices and the best ways to support our students and families that are most at risk. What we know is that we have the whole gamut of children in our classrooms today, and many of those children are struggling. They're struggling to come to school because of some of the challenges in their families, and so with their families outside of school. We are partnering with lots of people, social workers and guidance counselors, outside agencies, trying to figure out how we can wrap around and really provide the best for these families and ensure that the children, when come to school, are prepared and ready to learn and have the resources and the tools necessary to be successful. So that's our big comprehensive grant, and something quite innovative that we were able to pull together.
Good. Open it up to the SAU board. Brian?
Hello there.
Right there, Christy, there you go. What do you see as the biggest issues facing Timberlane and Hampstead?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's actually one that kind of just sort of a follow through with the conversation that or the topic that I was just speaking of, and that is ensuring that we have the ability in our schools to meet the needs of diverse learners. And when I say diverse learners, I'm not just talking about the students that might be struggling or that might have very specific learning needs. I'm also talking about the specific learning needs and the challenges of our accelerated learners. So when I think about things like creating opportunities, providing our teachers with the tools, sort of adding to their toolbox, if you will, ensuring that our teachers have the strategies and the supports, as well as the professional learning necessary to meet the needs of the learners in their classrooms. We all know at this point, we could probably all agree that we have a very changing society. Children who are sitting in our classrooms today are not the same as when you were sitting in a classroom or even when I was sitting in a classroom years ago. Preparing students for college, preparing students for careers, preparing students for citizenship. That looks different. We need to ensure that our teachers have the support, they have the professional learning, they have the resources they need to meet those needs of the students in their classrooms and to ensure their success. Certainly, there are other challenges in education today that aren't necessarily unique to the Hampstead and Timberlane regional school districts. They're challenges that we have across our state and across our country. On Friday, I joined other assistant superintendents and superintendents at the commissioners' meeting. This is something that we do monthly. And we're talking about things that are coming down from the state level. And again today, looking at some of the legislation that is moving through this legislative season and how it will impact our schools, how it will impact our districts, our policies, are things like our funding, right? Funding, and what that looks like as it's coming from the state. And so when you think about things like adequacy aid and what it means to fund an adequate education for students, these are some of the challenges that, again, are not necessarily unique to our districts, but are something that are on the horizon for our attention.
Thank you. Sarah?
Kind of springboarding off of what you were just speaking about, how would you, as assistant superintendent, support teachers to make sure they had the tools to then support all learners?
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Neckermer, for that question, because I'm very excited about something that's coming up this week, and it's a great example of how we can support our teachers. So, professional learning days, in some districts and in many years, would look like bringing a single presenter to the district, and all staff throughout the district would attend to that presentation. What we've learned about professional learning needs is that we have to differentiate. We know that of the 400 some odd people who will be coming in attendance to our professional learning day on Thursday this week, we know that our staff are in very different places with their knowledge, with their experience, with their understanding of various topics. And so what we have done over the last couple of years as part of the professional learning and curriculum department that I've been part of and have been leading is to differentiate. So we've got, gosh, I want to say, looking at Sandy, we've been planning what feels like 24 hours a day here for this day. I want to say we've got about 23 different options for our staff to attend. We've got people coming from across the state and out of state, many free of charge, to come to help our staff with this year's theme. This year's theme is to help our teachers and staff, administrators, all of us throughout the district, to have a better understanding, to increase our knowledge around social emotional learning. So we have, as I said, we've got experts from across the field that are coming on this day. We actually have our no bully training is going to take place for our staff in the morning session, and that's a full presentation. But in the afternoon, our teachers have the opportunity to select from either a single 3-hour session with one of those experts or 2 90-minute sessions. And so as part of our professional development software, if you will. Our teachers have been able to get into Teachscape, to read through the various offerings, and to select based on their needs. So Dr. Metzler often says, self-reflect and self-select, and that's what we're trying to empower our teachers to do. What are your specific needs for professional learning? And make some determinations based on your goals that you've set for yourself. Your professional learning needs based on a needs assessment. Where am I in my career? What information do I need to better support the students that are in my classroom? And make some selections that are most appropriate for them. And so that's our PD Day coming up on Thursday, which is pretty exciting.
Anybody else from the SAU board? Anybody from the public? Staff? You're not off the hook yet.
No, I hear those emails were coming in.
So, yeah, we are live streaming, and
Yes.
we do have viewers that have sent in questions. Can you list your top 2 strengths and the 2 weaknesses?
Okay. So I guess I'm gonna say that my strengths are around leadership in general, collaborative work with others. I feel like I'm a good listener. That is something that I have refined and a skill that I've developed over the years. And listening in terms of what does that actually mean has actually sort of changed as I've grown and developed in my career. And I would say that today it means all stakeholders. So when you're really close to the work, you're reaching out and you're working very closely with those that are on the forefront, working closest to students. And I think that my collaborative work, my ability to listen and to problem solve and brainstorm with others has really started to broaden. And really what that looks like now is an ability to engage parents, to engage community members and business partners, to work together to meet the goals, and I think that's a really important piece is developing those relationships so that we can work in unison. Schools, you'll hear this all the time. This is Jamie Vollmer's famous line: "Schools can't do it alone," and so recognizing when to reach out and how best to reach out to stakeholders and inviting them in to work with us has become a strength of mine. I think in terms of weakness, knowing when to go fast and knowing when to slow down. And that's really about knowing your people and knowing the people that you're working with. And so that is also a skill that I've been developing over time, and one that I continue to refine. As you might be able to tell, I am very excited about public education. I very much enjoy the work that I do. I didn't do my undergraduate work in 3.5 years because I wasn't excited about getting started teaching. I was. So I took those summer courses and got myself right into education. So I think recognizing that people are in different places, sometimes we need to adjust the pacing. Just because we can doesn't mean we should, and just kind of keeping that in mind is definitely something that I don't know so much as I'm going to call it out as a weakness, but certainly something that I continue to work on.
Thank you. What qualities do you look for when hiring an administrator, and how do you involve staff in the hiring process?
So the involvement of staff, that's actually been a great asset to our hiring process in the Timberlane Regional School District, and I would guess that as an SAU, the Hampstead community has also enjoyed just the work of our Human Resources Department, and that is really encouraging us to develop interview teams that are representative of various stakeholders. And so when we're attracting, whether it be administrators or we're attracting new staff, support staff, teachers to our district, really vetting the pool of candidates. Sometimes you end up with hundreds of candidates for a teaching position. Other times, you know, you might have a smaller pool. I think that it's incumbent upon us, it's our responsibility as leaders to ensure that we are vetting all of those candidates, vetting them well. We want the very best in front of our students each and every day. And again, I'm talking about administrators or teachers or support staff. And so really developing a comprehensive team made up of multiple individuals, parents and teachers and you know, various other position holders within the school and within the district are important to have as part of your team. Losing my way. Could you rephrase that or
How would
restate
you
the
get
question?
staff involved in the hiring process?
Yeah, so being part of the team is definitely the way to go with regard to the hiring. And I think the other part of the question was actually what do we look for in our administrators? We're looking for our administrators to have a vision. We're looking for our administrators to be good communicators, collaborators. We're looking for all the same things that you would expect of me, I expect of myself, and as an evaluator of our of some of our directors in the district, as well as an evaluator of our principals. These are the types of things that we evaluate our administrators on, and it's important that when we are interviewing that we're upfront and honest in terms of what we're looking for, because we do set a high expectation, and we monitor that progress as we go.
Thank you. Who has most influenced you to become an educator or an administrator, and how did they influence you?
So I come from a family of educators. My mom was an educator. I've got aunts that were involved in education. But you know, certainly I think the influence of my mom, you know, being a small child and helping, you know, staple things onto bulletin boards and correcting papers and that type of thing was all really exciting to me, and certainly something that you know, I aspired to when I was just a small little second grader. But I think in terms of leadership, I'm going to bring that back to the work that I've done at the local hospital. My mom was a volunteer at the local hospital. She volunteered throughout most of my childhood, and she got me involved in volunteering at that same local hospital when I was just sixth grade. By the time I started working, once I got to high school age, I had volunteered in numerous departments throughout the hospital, and just having individuals, other leaders throughout the hospital, other individuals see the specific skill sets that I offered inspired me. They gave me responsibility. I rose to the occasion, and have been able to sort of prove my skill sets ever since.
Excellent. What's your philosophy on delegating authority, and then how do you maintain accountability?
So as the Executive Director of Data Assessment and Accountability, that is something that we talk a lot about, is accountability. So how do I delegate? Well, we do that by assessing and learning, if you will, all the various strengths and skills that people bring to a team. And we're very fortunate in both districts to have talented, skilled individuals. Everybody from our support staff right up through our administrators. We've got skilled, talented people. We've got people with very strong work ethics. We've got people who have great ideas. And we have people who are willing to share different perspectives. And so that's been really important, is being able to engage people that aren't afraid to talk about either a disagreement or be in agreement with whatever it is that we might be challenged with, or a task, or whatever the case may be. And so when it comes to delegation, that's sort of where we're at. We delegate based on what those skill sets are. And sometimes it's not even skill sets. Sometimes it's about somebody's interest. And somebody might, share with me, or might share with the team that they're not quite sure where to go with this, and they might need some support, or they might need some assistance, but they've got some great interest in what it is that we might be doing. And so sometimes that delegation goes out towards people who just express an interest in the work that we're doing. And in terms of accountability, we do a lot of checking back, circling back around. As you would imagine, administrators are often in meetings, a lot of meetings. And through those meetings, we're often, again, circling back around. We're kind of checking in. We're monitoring progress. We do that a lot through our, as I had shared with you earlier, through our goal setting. Where are we at? What action steps have we taken toward accomplishing whatever it may be, and what more do we need to do to continue moving whatever it is forward. I hate to be so vague, but really it's with regard to anything that we're doing in education. Really, accountability comes back to, are we doing what we said we were going to do? What progress have we made? What resources, what tools, what professional learning is still needed for us to achieve?
Thank you. How would you engage students' parents as active participants in their children's education?
So the work that we do with community and with parents, in my opinion, my philosophy is about establishing good relationships. And good relationships, I think, are developed through transparency. Sometimes I can be at fault for giving too much information. and so as much as sometimes that's like, oh, Christy, you've given us too much, I guess I come from a place of wanting people to be informed. And I do that with parents too. Whether I'm meeting with a parent in my office, whether I've been asked to attend a student's meeting to share data, or whether we're inviting parents to a TPAF session. And our for those of you that don't know, our Timberlane Parent Advisory Forum. My hope is that we can share information with parents and with community members so that they better understand the work that we're doing within our schools, that they feel that they have a voice to talk with us about their ideas, to ask questions when they want clarity or when they need clarity, and that they feel that that there's a role for them, as part of and I'm going to go back to the goals, right? And that there's a role for parents and for community members to work in unison with the schools to achieve those goals. So TPAF has been great for that. Topics are usually shared with me as a co-chair, also with other co-chairs, Dr. Metzler. Ideas come to us all the time in terms of what parents would like to see with information to be shared. We have a TPAF session actually coming up next month with regard to internet safety. We had one last month that was very specific to vaping. We've talked about bullying. We've talked about things that parents care about and they want information about. And so that's been very encouraging to have parents involved in that way. We've also involved parents in advisories and in committee work. Again, a place for parents and community members to come, share ideas, be part of the process, to obtain the information that they might be seeking, and to help us, through some of the challenges that we face in education.
Thank you. What do you view as the top 3 priorities for Timberlane District over the next 2 years?
Timberlane District?
That's, the Timberlane District over the next 2 years.
All right. So top 3 priorities. Talked a little bit earlier about our abilities to meet the diverse needs of students. I think that is definitely something that we've got to keep on the forefront of the work that we do, because that's who we're here to serve, students. I think another priority would be, again, the piece that I just spoke about, the community and parent business partnerships, all of those folks out that might not be within our schools each and every day. Try to figure out how can we engage those folks to help us to advance the work, to meet our goals, and to better provide learning opportunities for students. And then I know we've got facilities concerns, and certainly that is a priority. And I know that's not unique to Timberlane. I know that Hampstead, you've also been looking at a building project, and so I think that that is something that we've got to work together with our stakeholders. We've got to think about and bring new perspectives to the table, and work together collaboratively to see some of those priorities through.
Thank you. Sure. Yeah.
Just to kind of follow up on that, you know me, I'm Dr. Dancy.
I do.
You know Timberlane really, really well. Can you share with us some specific things you're going to do to get to know Hampstead really, really well?
Yeah, I'm going to spend time in your schools. I'm going to spend time in your schools. Not that I haven't, actually. I've had some opportunities to spend some time in your schools, to talk about some of the work that we've done in Timberlane, and to talk about how to connect some of that work. We've had some great conversations, curriculum related, technology related, and whatnot. And so, yeah, that's where I'd begin. Really, is developing relationships in Hampstead, getting into your schools, meeting your teachers, asking them questions about what's going well, what do you enjoy, what are your needs, what are your concerns. That'll help me to be more informed in my leadership. As we think about goal setting for the upcoming 1920 school year, being informed and having that information helps through that needs assessment process and helps us to be strategic in moving things forward in the upcoming year. In addition to being in the schools and talking with teachers and talking with staff and administrators, also getting to know the Hampstead Board. Something I look very much forward to. I know, as I said earlier, that each of you as board members come to the table with purpose. You have ideas, and you're here for a reason. You care very much about your communities, and you're bringing those ideas and concerns to your seat as board members. And so I would appreciate the opportunity to really get to know our board members and to talk about how do we work collaboratively, how do we build relationships to move the work of our both our goals, but in our mission, which is it's exciting to me.
Thank you. What method will you use to keep yourself and the school board current on important community and school matters?
So I think that that's sort of that's ongoing work for me. I spend a lot of time talking with people, researching. As I shared with you, I was at the commissioners meeting on Friday. I was at the legislative review this morning. This is where we're getting a lot of our information, spending time in schools, talking with various stakeholders. That's how I stay informed. That's how I keep myself up to date. But it also is the way in which I collect information to share out. So whether I'm holding a principals directors meeting and sharing that information with our leaders throughout the district, or whether I be sitting with board members, the more information that I'm able to collect in terms of keeping myself current, keeping myself aware and in the know of what's happening within our districts, but also within the greater community, statewide, and even nationally. I think it benefits us all, really. Again, to be informed, information is power, right? And helps us to make those good decisions collaboratively together.
Thank you. Please share an example of how you helped mentor a teacher. What improvements did you see in the person's knowledge and skills?
As a school principal, I had several opportunities to work closely with both veteran staff members that had their own challenges and were experiencing different struggles and things over the course of their career, as well as our new educators. And so I think as a school principal, I had lots of opportunities to engage with classroom teachers through the supervision evaluation process, through goal setting and needs assessment. We were able to establish goals that were very specific, again, to the interest of teachers, but more specifically to the needs of our educators. And I've done a variety of things. I used to enjoy getting into classrooms and modeling. That was a lot of fun for me. Today, I'm able to do some of that modeling, if you will, in my work with data teams and target teams, various school committees. Providing resources to teachers, whether that be an article, whether that be an effective instructional practice, those were always way and still are. I've got principals that will sit down with me, we'll sort of brainstorm what the needs might be of an educator and how we can help and support them. We do a lot of that. I think the mentoring and induction program that we have in our school districts is phenomenal. Really sets the stage for our new educators to feel supported, to feel that they have not only the support but the resources and the training that they need to be successful in their first years into our district. And I guess I'm also just thinking about opportunities where I've invited teachers to visit other classrooms, so that oftentimes some of our teachers will say, gosh, I just want to see what it looks like, right? We can have a conversation about what it means to ask more higher level questions in your classroom, right? To get students problem solving and thinking at a higher level. We can talk about that together. But many of our teachers want to see it in action. And we have teachers that will welcome other teachers into their classrooms. And so that was something I've done to support educators, is really just to give them opportunities to see what might be what their colleagues are doing throughout the school, and in some instances going to other schools and other districts and learning from their colleagues throughout the state.
Thank you. Tell us about a time that you overcame an obstacle and how you overcame that.
This is not a delay tactic, it's my drama. All right. We had a significant challenge when I was at the Windham School District. We had several months of leaky roofs and leaky siding and water coming in through windows of our portable building. We had a 10-room portable. Again, this was at the onset of our district bringing on public kindergarten. So we were busting at the seams. And so we had a 10-room portable classroom. Out in our portable, we had 8 first-grade classrooms, 160 kids. And after several months of trying to initiate repairs and to deal with these leaky roofs and coming into, after a rainy weekend, coming into wet carpets and things like that, As the school principal, worked very closely with our board members and our central office administrators, and together we made a decision in February that we would bring 160 kids, take 160 kids, 8 classes, out of this portable building, and we would close this building for the remainder of the school year. Obstacle? You're wondering where we put 160 kids when we were already busting at the seams in our main building. We made it happen. We didn't make it happen alone. We made it happen with the support of phenomenal staff and parents. We, over a couple of days, we slowly began to move the children into the main building. We had to think creatively. We had to work together. We had to problem solve. What were we going to do if this was what we were dealing with for the remainder of the school year? Again, it's winter and it's February. And so we brought children in. We reconstructed our library space, our art room, our music room. We repurposed various spaces, and we were able to bring the children in. That was a temporary piece. We knew that we needed to think more systematically. We needed to think and work together with our boards and our upper level administration to figure out what we were going to do really for a longer period of time. And during this time period, we had a brand new high school, and that high school was built there was a room, if you will, in the high school. We had a district preschool up at the high school, and in that same wing, there were some classrooms that weren't being utilized. I had 4 third-grade classrooms over February break. We moved 4 third-grade classrooms from my building up to the high school, where they remained for, I think, the next 5 years. Not kidding you. They're doing some building projects there now, and I believe those third graders are back into the elementary school, but they stayed there for a long time. And it was a phenomenal experience for them. But we moved those classes over. We redesigned spaces, and our 160 first graders following February break were all into new learning spaces. And I think the piece that is really exciting about all of this, we didn't miss a beat. We didn't miss a beat. Those kids did not miss a beat. Education continued, high-level education continued for those students. But I'll tell you, the work of the planning, the coordination, the partnership between parents and administration and our boards and our staff was phenomenal. You could picture 2 really late nights where we took everything out of those portable classrooms, 8 classrooms, and parents helped us to take all of the educational supplies, everything out of those portable classrooms, and basically overnight set up new classrooms for these students. They never saw anything different, but I'll tell you that was a significant obstacle that we overcame. When I think about the learning opportunities for me as a young administrator, I think about just the well-coordinated efforts of many. I think about tapping into the strengths of staff and parents and community members that helped us through that. And I think about the communication that it took, the frequent, the ongoing communication over several days, over several weeks, and really for the remainder of that school year. Every step of the way, we had to communicate and be very specific with our parents and transparent with our families, so that they knew and they felt confident. And that though we had to make a major move in the middle of the school year, that the children were minimally affected, and great high-quality education continued.
Excellent. You have a few minutes, no more questions, but if you would like to make some closing remarks.
Thank you. I would like to say that I would be honored to be the next assistant superintendent in SAU55. I am invested and committed to the districts. We have done some phenomenal work over my time, over the last 4 years, but I know that in both districts, great work has been happening for many years. That's why we attract great staff. It's the reason why people choose to stay, and it's the reason why families, I think, move into our communities and choose to send their children to our schools. I think that my experience as a central office and systems level administrator, working with administrators, working with families, working with staff from the preschool level all the way up through the high school, has really afforded me opportunities to demonstrate that I'm prepared to take on this role. I think that one of the things that we didn't talk too much about this evening is, just financial responsibilities and budgeting. I, like you, value long-term financial stability. And I know that that's not always easy. It means making some tough decisions at times. But I can tell you from being an administrator, being a leader in districts that have very healthy budgets, and being an administrator where there was no budget at all, that we can and do provide students with high quality education within the constraints of whatever financial resources that we are afforded. And I think with that, I thank you. This was actually a pleasure to chat with you today and to share what some of my experiences have been here in the Timberlane Regional School District and over the years throughout my career. So again, thanks very much.
Ms. Michaud, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So our third and final candidate for this evening is Mr. Michael Flynn. Mike, come on up to the podium. Mr. Flynn, if you could take a few minutes to introduce yourself and a little background.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for this evening, the interview committee for the time and effort that you put into the search. And anyone out there that's still awake and online, I appreciate you tuning in to see what's going on. There's always been investment in this district, and it certainly shows this evening. My life in a nutshell. Let's see. To see where I am today, it's been different. I've come into education probably a little bit non-traditional, as some people may have. I went to college to play hockey, and at that point, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. And I found out I was a pretty good student around junior year, and after junior year, I decided marketing and information technology at the time would be a great path for me. After I graduated, I signed a minor league contract and went out there and thought I was going to be, the next Sidney Crosby, which failed miserably, as you can tell. But I also realized at that time that I was meant for more than just playing a sport at that time. So I jumped back into school and got my MBA and thought I was going to take on the business world. And when I got in, I'll use the real world, I realized that I hated every day I went to work. It was not what I was meant to do in life. And at the time, I was coaching hockey at Manchester Central, and one of the guys on the team, one of the kids is like, Coach, why don't you teach? I mean, look what you do with these misfits. Look how you've got us all to believe in each other and perform. He's like, you should be in school. And me taking advice from a high schooler, why not, right? So I jumped in and started a second master's degree to get my teaching certificate. And I started teaching in 2008 in Milford. And I thought I was going to be a high school teacher. I thought I was going to do marketing and accounting and DECA and all that fun stuff. And the market crashed in 08, and no teachers were retiring. So Milford called me, I think August 23rd. I'd packed my stuff up, and I was working in a hockey shop at the time. And I had an interview, and they offered me the position. I said, all right, I'm going to teach middle school. And boy, was I in for a rude awakening. 8th grade was great. 7th grade, I handled my own, and then 6th grade walked in the door, and forget about it. I didn't know what to do. And I was teaching technology, and I was telling them that they needed to use their mouse, and I'll never forget the first day. He's like, "What's a mouse?" I said, "All right, I got a long way to go here." And so I went home and I told my wife I didn't think that education was going to work for me, and she said I didn't have a choice anymore. And then that was the career path I was on. And thankfully for her, that is the path. And I realized it, after those first couple bumps, I got into it and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the interaction with the students and the kids, and it brought a lot of self-worth. And I realized that leaving the real world and getting to work with students every day was the right path. And then a little bit after teaching, about 2 years in, I said, I want to be a leader within districts and make a difference at a greater level. And as I said in the interview process, you have your caseload, so I had my 100 kids, but then when you have a building, you can impact teachers and students and families. So that's when I went back and got my third master's degree. And from there, I've kind of worked my way through here. This is my 6th year at Timberlane. I was hired as a dean, and then I was lucky enough to be hired as an assistant principal, and then extremely fortunate to have the support of Timberlane and the board at the time to promote me to principal. So that's where I am today. I applied because I told my staff it's the hardest decision I've ever made. Excuse me. But I believe in the district, and I want to be here forever is the word I use to them. So this was an opportunity to take the next step and to be here for quite some time. So that's where I'm at.
Mr. Flynn, thank you. We're going to start off with 3 questions, and then we're going to go to the SAU board and then the public. What do you consider the 3 most critical issues facing superintendents in the Board of Education today?
We live in New Hampshire, and finance and budgeting is going to be the most critical and important challenge that we face for years to come. There's no way around it in New Hampshire. You're tied to your towns. There's no other way to seek support or income or budgetary factors without the support of those stakeholders. Income tax is, you bring it up, and depending on what side of the fence you're on, people are willing to listen. Some people aren't willing to listen. It's a challenge across the state. It's not just a Timberlane and Hampstead issue. It's everywhere I go, everywhere, anyone you talk to in the state, every year it's a challenge because, we all own property. We lease, rent, whatever it may be, and that's where we see the significant amount of our income going, is to the schools. So part of the challenge is, how do we get the stakeholders who no longer have a student invested in the system to believe that what we're using their money for is important? There's some data out there that shows New Hampshire has one of the eldest demographic as well. All the kids come to school here, UNH, all these schools, and then they leave and they go to different states. So, a lot of our residents don't have that connection, not the connection to the school, but necessarily, a horse in the race with one of their children. Another one is, we're dealing with a lot of social, emotional stuff that's coming through our schools. We're seeing children that they're not wired different. I don't think that's fair. I think they're brought new challenges and new obstacles. I had a conversation with a family the other day. These students are having to make decisions earlier and often than they ever have when it comes to peer interaction, and they're having to make it earlier, which I think is determining how they become. We didn't have to do that. We didn't have to make decisions rapidly at the age that they are, whether it be academically or athletically or musically or whatever choices they're making. It seems like it's getting pushed down further and further. And, it's a little bit of fault of our, I have a daughter, Grace, in 3rd grade, and I'm part of her problem. And that's just what we are. We're in a world where we're trying to do more or create more opportunity, and sometimes that's what it is. So superintendents in the state need to do a little area of, I would say, teaching the parents of the communities the decisions that their children are having to make earlier and helping them and supporting them. I know we're in the business of students, but I think we're also in the business of working with parents and community members to make better students in the end. Third, as a superintendent, I think a lot of the challenges are going to come probably, I don't want to say vaping because it's a hot topic right now, but the area of substance abuse, okay? Again, not that I'm making excuses, but it's easier for them to do it now, all right? You can't, when you lit a cigarette in the bathroom back in high school, people could smell it, you know, and it wasn't as easy. Now, do I think it's as big of a problem as people portray? No, but I do think that we need to figure out how to curb their interest in it. And with the right procedures in place, with district support, then we can educate our children and our parents on where this thing can lead. Those would be three that I would choose right now.
Thank you. In any capacity, teacher, administration, district level, what sort of unique, creative, inspired, out-of-the-box type of idea did you implement that saw results?
That was a long question. Can you?
In any capacity, be it a teacher, administrator, or district level,
Yep.
what sort of unique, creative, out-of-the-box type of idea did you implement, and what type of results came from that?
Out of the box. I'll use this year as an example. A teacher shared with me the power of one word. I don't know if anyone is aware of that currently. So one word, everyone makes New Year's resolutions, and everyone says that I'm going to lose weight, or I'm going to exercise more, or they end up making a laundry list of these things that they want to accomplish. And what the teacher shared with me that is, if you can select one word, no matter how old you are, and what you're invested in and what you buy in, then it can help make a lot of decisions with you throughout the year. So this has kind of taken multiple steps this year. I introduced it at the welcome back meeting to my staff, and I introduced my word as effort. And every day when I come to work, I put 100% effort into no matter what I'm doing, whether it's talking with a parent or working with a student or a faculty member, whatever it may be. That's what drove me every day when I walked through the building. So I challenged my staff to come up with one word. What's one word that will drive them throughout this school year? And how will it help them make decisions, whether it be within their classroom or when they're talking to their colleagues, however it may be. And I had them all write it down, and I had them all hang it outside their room. And then I had them all discuss it with their students on why they selected it. I discussed it with 6th, 7th, and 8th grade at the beginning of the year, the class meetings. And then after we embedded it in our discussion amongst each other, I then hung it in the annex in our building, and then the students saw all the collective, all 135 of them hanging on the wall, and it drove some discussion. And then the next month, we asked the students to think about their one word and ask what their one was, and then the teachers then asked them to put it on the same piece of paper, same color, one word, nothing else to it, and then they discussed it in their classrooms, and now everyone in the building, their one word is hanging in the annex. So it's been a way to drive discussion in the building and encompass what you feel when you're in school. It's different for everybody. Some kids hate school, and that's fair. Some kids love school, and that's fair. Some kids go through the motions. But when they were able to really dive down and think about what their one word was, we saw a lot of discussion driven in the school, and it was very powerful. Kids, you wouldn't even imagine the word that they chose. You'd be like, that makes a lot of sense. So I think we've had a lot of, well, again, this is selfish, but I think we've done a pretty good job with that, so it went really well.
Thank you. How would you go about establishing good public relations in the district?
Yeah, public relations is what we need to do better at. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. We need to do a better job telling our story, excuse me. It's not that we don't tell our story, and we do a fairly good job, but a lot of our stories are told through a student going home and telling their parent what may have occurred, or what may have happened in class, or what they may have learned. So I know we've been doing a little bit better job. Easy ways that we've been able to tell our story is through Twitter. I've been trying to do more posting on Twitters of what's happening in the classroom, what students are learning, what activities they may be doing. It goes back to us telling our story because we do great things every day. Every day, there's powerful things that are occurring in every school in this district. I know Mr. Collins and Mr. Nola, they're doing amazing things in Hampstead, and then you can talk about Don and Michelle and all these things. And too often what drives some of our public relations are the bad things that occur, and that's fair. Those are other things that occur. But to improve public relations, we have to do a better job of being transparent and communicating the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then gaining the trust from the community that this is what we're doing, and it goes back to connecting what we said in the beginning. If we're able to continue to tell our story and show all the good things that are occurring, they'll understand when we may or may not ask for something in need. So it's an important part to the success of any school district, for sure.
Thank you. Open up to the SAU board members. Any questions? Ryan?
I think you covered part of this, but what if you expand about what you see as like the biggest issues facing Timberlane in the next 2 to 5 years, and see what we can do. I realize you're
Sure. Timberlane specific, right?
Timberlane, and then if you could also touch on Hampstead. I know you're probably more familiar with
Sure.
Timberlane, but if you
Yeah, I have quite a bit of equity in Timberlane. But, you know, Timberlane, we live in a regional school district, all right? So that brings its challenges itself. So you have different communities that have different levels of demographics. And through the 6 years that I've been here, I've gotten to know, you know, Sandown, Danville, Plastow, and Atkinson, and what their expectations are. You get to meet the community members, the parents, the families, and the biggest challenge, obviously, is the budget. It's been a topic of discussion since the day I walked in the building as an academic dean, and it's a good discussion because you want to be able to talk to taxpayers when they call and say, no, we are not spending frivolously. We are calculated. We are trying to plan. All of that goes into us just saying, you know what, we need this to operate, and that's what it is. And it's going to be continue a problem. You know, last year we were on the default budget, and we've had to operate quite differently this year within our schools. And I think we've done a fairly good job. I don't think the budget's ever going to go away. And I'm going to say this again, I don't think it's just this area. It's every town you live in. I teach at SNU, and we do cohorts around the state. And this semester I'm in Rochester. They're battling a budget. Last semester I was out at the Seacoast in Hampton, and they're doing some challenging budgeting things as well. But then to move forward, Mr. Boyle, I think the facilities is a discussion, and you know, I've worked with you quite a bit on some of the committees. You know, we are in some aging facilities, and it's a challenge because anytime you talk facility, you think large number, right? There's no way around that. So that really takes time, and just quickly to transition to Hampstead, I know you guys have been battling that the renovation project for quite some time now, and it didn't pass again this year. I currently live in Wyndham, and you know, we had that same battle multiple years of bringing the same thing to the ballot and failing. But with facilities, we need to really have some thought in the strategic plan, what we do, and of what are we going to do? That problem's not going away. We're staring at it every day we walk in it. I deal with it every day. There's something wrong in our facility that we need to fix, Band-Aid, whatever it may be. And we've also done a very good job of, I'll say, dressing the building up in the 2 years that I've been working as the principal. And, you know, fresh paint is silly, but paint makes a difference. Lighting, ceiling tiles, things like that. So that's a challenge in the district, and understanding that if we improve our facilities, it's better for the students. And you know, people laugh when I talk about furniture, but furniture is a big passion of mine. I've been selling it to Timberlane quite some time. Anytime I get a chance, furniture makes a difference. It's a different. If we're stuck in the walls that we're going to be stuck in, we can improve other areas with furniture. And furniture is, you know, it's been a big driver in the change of our system, our settings in the classroom, and how kids feel when they walk in, and it's really made a difference. And furniture goes a lot further, right? We can use it for multiple years. It's not a one-shot deal. To transition a little bit to Hampstead, I think your biggest battle is that renovation and improvement of those facilities as well. The harder part is your stuff's already been on the ballot. So now you really have to evaluate, how do we change the communication to the community so that they understand this is a need and not necessarily a want? Right? Sure, we want new facilities. Everyone in the state does. There's facilities failing everywhere in the state. But why do we need it? Why do we need you know, small testing areas where that might not have existed before? Because now we have more pull-out students than we ever have. So that's going to continue to be, I think that's on the forefront of probably the next couple of years. And you have to continue to bring it. That's not something that's going to go away. So I think those are two of the areas that we're working for.
Sue?
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Ms. Sherman.
Talk a little bit about your teaching experience at SNU. I'm assuming you're working with emerging teachers or people who want to change careers and come into education. Give me some positive feeling that we've got some people coming along.
Sure. Actually, I am in the graduate school, and I'm working with teachers who are going to become administrators. And when I went through my superintendent's program, we had our capstone things that we had to do. And Dave Ryan, I don't know if anyone knows that name, but he's a pretty big guy in New Hampshire. Dave Ryan was in the program with me, and what he designed, or what he dreamt of at that time, and now is in fruition, is New Hampshire was losing, New Hampshire districts were losing their own talented teachers, right? So those teachers would go to a grad program to become an administrator, and then they'd lose them, and they wouldn't even know they had them. So what he created was a cohort at SNU, and asked me to come teach with him. And what you do is, Timberlane I finally got one here at Timberlane. Timberlane just started one this past semester. 25 teachers are in there. They're going to become certified as administrators. We get to see the talent pool. We get to see what they're made of. We get to teach them. We get to train them on what we're doing and what our expectations are. But I've worked in Manchester, Londonderry, Rochester, Seacoast, Merrimack. So each district has now started these cohorts, and we're working with these people to bring real life experience. You know, I have a topic that I start every class. What happened in school today? And we share stories of things that have occurred so that we can figure out how do you react, how do you don't react, how do you get better. And as these students make it through the cohorts, they become certified. I mean, I've interviewed people here that have been in the cohorts. So that's kind of the gist of that. But it's really, to be honest, it's the best part of my day because it's adult talk, as I say. I love my kids. I love my own kids, and I love the middle school kids. But it's higher level talk on what to do and how to act. So that's kind of what my role is at SNU, and I've been very fortunate that they keep hiring me back. So I've enjoyed it for sure.
Ms. Silva? If you could take the mic so that the viewers can hear. Thank you.
You touched upon it, my question a little bit with regards to your personal life, but professionally, I'm just curious if you have a specific example you can provide, that would be great. But if not, how would you handle a situation where you started down one path and maybe realized after being heavily invested that that might not be the best path to go down any longer?
Yeah. A specific example. I have a really good team that I work with. I've been fortunate. And, you know, we have our Monday meeting, and I come to the table with, you know, how I feel something should be going in the building or which direction we should be going. And recently, I was really determined, I guess that's the right way to say it, with an avenue that we were going to attack within the classrooms. I don't want to go into too much, so I'm going to give, okay. With an avenue that I wanted to attack within the classrooms to set some higher expectations for our adults at the time. And sometimes my team has done a great job of saying, not now, maybe not ever, you really need to think about this, and they'll give me feedback on why it may be. And I have to, and I pride myself on listening, and I have to listen to what they're feeling, right? So we have a great structure where we have team meetings every week, and all that discussion goes through the assistant principals. And this one expectation that I wanted to set, they said, listen, you're the boss, but this isn't going to go well if you do it. So I took their advice at the time, and it worked out better for us in the end. And then when I met with them, and you know, they gave me the "I told you so," which is fair. But it was also a learning experience for me, because they weren't telling me no, but they were telling me to reevaluate at a later time. And I think that occurs, you know, in life. You know, we do a lot where we have to be quick at what we decide or what we have to make in decisions. We do a lot of bouncing off one another. I think that's important as administrators. You can't think that it's your way or the highway. That's not going to work in education. But you have to be able to listen to the teachers. They're the ones that are on the ground floor working every day with the students behind the doors. And if you can't solicit their feedback, whether it be through my team or not, you're gonna fail pretty quickly in school.
Thank you. Sarah?
Hi, Mr. Flynn.
Hey, Sarah.
So this is a question I've asked everybody. I feel it's important to kind of give everybody the same opportunity. How would you, as assistant superintendent, support teachers to ensure that they have the tools to then support all learners?
Sure. I think it looks a little bit different if I'm leaving as a principal to the assistant superintendent's role. I think a lot of that that solicitation would come through the discussion with the building principals, because I truly believe that the building principal should be communicating to the SAU what their needs may be. Now, it can look different. It could look, teachers, I couldn't be meeting with them directly somehow through committee work. It really is to make sure that what we're doing is correct for kids, right? Sometimes we get information from a specific teacher and they want to do something within the classroom. We've really had to change the way we look this year through budgeting, especially because we got to make sure that what we're purchasing is sustainable in the long run, that we're not picking something that may only last for a year because we know next year we'll have a supported budget, whatever it may be. But it's really the teachers using the appropriate process of, whether it be elementary or high school, asking for things that they need, principals and assistant principals vetting that it will work for all and that it is a proper investment on our end, and then working with the principals to make sure that the teachers are getting everything they need within the classroom. And I think we have a lot of structures in place for that, but you want to make sure that the voices are being heard and someone can't say, well, I didn't ask because I was never allowed. So I think it starts at that part for sure.
Anybody else?
Hi, Mike again.
Thanks, Ms. Sherman.
You can call me Sue.
All right.
as a matter of fact, but-
Someday I will.
The other two candidates have talked a little bit about their leadership style. It's kind of what they did in their opening remarks. And I
Yeah.
didn't know you played hockey, but we could have a whole conversation about hockey. But can you talk a little bit about what do you see as your leadership style going into this assistant's position?
I think my leadership style has been pretty standard since, I'm going to play the card, since I was a captain, as a Bantam. And then I was a captain of my team in high school as a junior. And then I was a captain of my hockey team as a junior in college. I'm about empowerment and looking at everyone as they're a diamond in the rough. And if you have the inability to look at everyone for their inabilities, then you're never going to be able to lead anybody. Everyone has an ability to do something. And if you're looking specifically in the educational platform, every teacher is there for a reason. They're able to do something, right? But my leadership style is empowerment. More specifically, currently what we have going on with my team, Ms. Kelker is a first-year assistant principal. Mr. Mensis is a second-year assistant principal. Ms. Hutnick's been around for quite some time. It's the same conversation that I have with Ms. Hutnick that I would have with Ms. Kelker as a first year. We hired you to do the job. What are you thinking? What are you doing? What's the decision that you've come up with? It changes a little bit where, Ms. Kelker may be looking for some more answers at this time. But I know Mr. Mensis this year, I've said, it's your turn. It's your turn to make that decision, and I'll support you in that. You can say sorry later type of thing. But then Ms. Hutnick, we've had some in-depth conversations on the way she's supervised and worked with students. But my style, even as an assistant superintendent, is empowerment. Empowering the principals and the assistant principals and the academic deans and curriculum coordinators. We have a lot of intelligent people that are much smarter than me in the area that they're assigned, that should be advising me on why they're doing things, and then with the support and the empowerment of that ensuring that they're making those decisions. So I stand behind you know, the coaching mindset, the empowerment. You know, I'm not a New England guy. I'm sorry. I'm not a Patriot fan. I'll get it out of there in the open. Just, I know. It's bad news.
I wouldn't have said that, but.
I've still survived here, but, you know, for as much as it pains me to say, and my staff will know this, that, I mean, Bill Belichick is the best. You know, I mean, he doesn't have all the all-stars, but guess what? He finds a diamond in the rough with everyone he signs, and he brings the best out of them. So, and that, my family who's watching probably tonight it's gonna be bad for me later, but I appreciate what Bill Belichick does for sure.
Should I ask for his closing remarks now, or shall we continue?
I could have sealed that. I get it.
Thank you for being honest with us.
I have to.
Another question from any of the staff? Okay, we're going to go to some online questions. What specific experiences have you prepared for this central office position?
You know, experience is something, that question that I've been fighting forever in my career in education. When I went to get hired as a teacher, you don't have experience. And you have to prove to those interview committees and those people in that room that they'll trust you to work with their students, and that you have the ability to make those decisions within the classroom. Then you get questioned when you want to become an administrator. You have no experience. Why should we hire you? And again, you have to prove your worth to those people in the room, that you have everything in your skill set to make those proper decisions as an administrator. I can't sit here and tell you that I have a lot of SAU or central office experience, but I can tell you that I will do my best to figure it out. If I don't know it, I will solicit help from the people that have been there before. But the things that I connect currently right now is I have, since my time in Timberlane, sat on all the school committees, school board committees. So I've done CNA for 5 years, feels like forever. I've done facilities, I've done safety, I've done policy. So I have worked with board members at that capacity on, you know, the communication of what's currently going on in the school, or how we can improve, or what their opinions are that they're hearing from community members on things that we should improve. So to say, I mean, my resume is empty. I don't have that box checked, but I can assure you that I will work my darndest to prove to you that I have the ability to do those things.
Excellent. Can you list 2 of your strengths and 2 of your weaknesses, please?
I would like to say 2 of my strengths would be communication, not only with just faculty and students, but family members when need be. Another strength of mine is, I'll use the word compassion, but I don't know if that's accurate, but it's creating an environment in which people want to come to work, and understanding that we support them in all things in life. I always use the example that sometimes you need to realize that when someone's pet dies, that may be their kid because they don't have kids. And you have to understand that they may need a day to recover because that was their life. So when we talk about compassion, we just talk about that there's a lot that goes on in everyone's life. And when you have 135 adults and 800 kids, there's something every day that's going on. And you need to just be understanding that everything that's going on in someone's life needs to be respected and understood, and that we'll work with them no matter what. Weaknesses, man. Those are tough interview questions. What do I do bad at? You know, that's how you like to say it in your head, but areas that I can improve upon are things that I've worked on. How about that? Things that I've had to work on. You know, 2 people in my life have said, you know, sometimes you got to take the heart out and put the rock in. And that's been challenging for me. I've had to work at that understanding that you can't save everyone or do everything with heart. Sometimes it needs to be methodical in what's best for the good of the whole, rather than understanding that. So I think that's an area I've really had to improve upon, because you want to save everyone in our job. You want to be able to solve everything for everyone, whoever it may be. So I've really had to work on that. I'm going to leave it at that. It's tough.
Having a little technical difficulties here. Okay. All right, Mr. Flynn, what's your philosophy on delegating authority, and then how do you maintain accountability?
I am, I would say, I love to delegate. And it comes out wrong, right, when you say it, I love to delegate. But it goes back to the empowerment. It's the opposite. I'm not a micromanager in any way whatsoever. So if there's something that someone's better at, why on earth would I be doing it? And I talked about that earlier. There's a lot of people in our positions in our districts that are much more talented than I am in certain areas. Writing, for example, it's not my strong suit. I can go back to weakness if we want to go back real quick. But Ms. Kelker, we hired her this year. She's a language arts teacher. She's a writer. She has now proofread everything that I have typed. You know, Mr. Mensis in his technology abilities with some of those things, I'll be like, Mitch, I need this in a PowerPoint, I need this in Excel, and it's done in a half hour. You know, there's a lot of things that principals are doing throughout the day that if I'm not able to delegate, then forget about me getting things accomplished. In regards to the accountability piece, I think I drive people nuts with that. I continually follow up, check on, come back to until I feel 100% that whatever was expected is completed to the best ability. I'll follow up on emails 3 months later, and they'll be like, Mike, I solved that. You know, I told you I solved that. I said, just making sure nothing came back around, because a lot of times that'll happen too. You know, things are solved, but then the parent will reach out a week later. You know, always making sure that we're helping the parents and the community members, however it may be. I'm good with following up with teachers on things that may need to have been done and completed. You know, we just closed grades in the middle school for trimester 2, and we switched to a new Power School Pro this year. So we had to do a lot of Mr. Patterson and I had to do a lot of back checking behind the scenes. I have my list that I have every day that people make fun of me for, but we make sure we try and check all the boxes before the day's over. Anything that needs to be completed.
Excellent. Tell us about a challenge or a conflict you faced at work, and how did you deal with it?
Challenge or conflict? There's conflict every day. Dealing with conflict in a school system, and you know, and I always try and communicate this to parents. If you can imagine 135 adults and 806 kids trying to exist and love each other all day, it's nearly impossible. So the most conflict that we deal with is peer-to-peer, believe me, peer-to-peer, adult-to-adult, student-to-teacher. We have conflict with parents who communicate in. So there's a lot of conflict resolution that is required in education, and it's working with those people to understand that everyone has a voice in it, good, bad, or indifferent, whether you see eye to eye. It goes back to communicating, you know, why are you upset, what are you feeling, or what happened, what may have occurred, and then coming to a resolution that everyone feels appropriate with, and understanding that we're all on the same team. I use that a lot. You know, parents, we're on the same team. This is a partnership. We can't go at this alone, nor do we ever want to. We want to form that with the students. I always talk about being on the same team. Our school colors are black and gold. That's a good thing for me. So we talk about being on the same team and being prideful and understanding that, you know, we got to get along. It's life. You know, that's not going away. There's plenty of people, that everyone in the world or everyone out there that you work with that you don't like, you don't get along with, but you still got to get a job done. And our job in schools is learning and accessing our education. So those are the most challenging conflict situations.
Okay. What method would you use to keep yourself and the school board current on important community and school matters?
Yeah, I think that's full investment on the side of the assistant superintendent, SAU. It's constant communication with your stakeholders. You know, your board members are your partnership. You know, they hear from their constituents and their stakeholders. They should be communicating with the SAU on what they're hearing, what's going on, what their feeling is, what their belief is. Then you can go down the path of, you know, athletic events, music events, old home days. Those are new ones for me when I moved to New Hampshire. I didn't know what those were until we got here. It's that open door policy and it's so important that if you're feeling frustrated at home, I tell my parents all the time, call, pick up the phone, shoot us an email. Say the same thing to my wife. I'm not a mind reader. I don't know what you're thinking. You know, you need to communicate it with me so that we can solve problems together. That's very big. Understanding that that we're here to support them for whatever they may be, because at the end of the day, it's about their kid, and that's what we care most about. But it's also the people that don't have the horse in the race with their kid. It's about, they still have a part. This is a community, so you still have a buy-in. You still have a stake in that. You are a stakeholder, sorry, and you should be communicating with us too. You know, these are your tax dollars. We say it all the time, and we mean that. It's not. We understand and we appreciate what you do to support us. So the open door policy is something that I live and die by, for sure.
Thank you. Tell us how you would handle a student bullying issue.
Yeah, every day. Bullying is it's again, I'll say it. It's not a Timberlane thing. It's a state thing, and it's important that if in the assistant superintendent's role that we're making sure that the principals and assistant principals are following the proper procedures and policies that we have in place to protect the students. I don't see myself as assistant superintendent being in those situations anymore, but currently as a principal and is living the assistant principal role, it's soliciting the information, whatever may have occurred, opening the investigation, communicating with parents, communicating with the students, all that process that we have in place. If I were in this role as a superintendent, it'd be ensuring that those procedures and policies are followed by the principals and assistant principals. And then not only that, it's important that if the parents don't feel that it is appropriately happening at the building level, that goes back to the open door policy, that they're communicating it with the principal would be my recommendation first. And then if you don't feel okay with how the principal may have handled it, then working your way up to the SAU and forming that relationship on making sure that we resolve all the issues.
Please share an example of how you would helped mentor a teacher. What improvements did you see in the person's knowledge or skills?
Most recently, we were lucky enough to hire, I started mentoring this teacher when he was a paraprofessional. I hope he doesn't care that I talk about him, I guess, in an open forum with everyone watching, but I really connected with the 7th grade social studies teacher probably about 3 years ago, and he just graduated, no experience, and he's in one of the hardest fields in social studies. You know, every time a social studies application opens, there's probably 54, 55 applicants for that area. So he just wanted to do whatever he could to get into school and prove his worth. And he was the recess monitor and in-school suspension monitor. Very challenging positions at the middle school. And he would always come by, Mike, what can I do? How do I do this? And you started to see him grow, and he understood the importance of relationship building with students. And I think that's one of the greatest things you can do as an educator or a teacher is form those relationships so that the students have you as a person in school. And I saw him grow from very rigid to understanding that, you know, Johnny might be different than Adam, and understanding that what goes on in Johnny's home can be totally different from what goes on in Adam's home. And he got to understand that and get to know the kids. So then when he was going through the interview process, he really shined in that area, talking about relationships and how it made him become a better educator, and he thinks that it would improve his classroom, and he would garner that respect from students, and it would create that rapport within the rooms that everyone feels protected is not the right word, but understands that teacher's in their corner. And then we saw, as a first-year teacher, we saw him struggle in a lot of areas. And those areas are the things they don't teach you when you are a teacher, but you try and empower them. So that goes to classroom management. You know, typical things that, you know, I always say to everyone, teaching's the easiest part. It's the easiest part of the job. It's everything else that goes on. So what do you do when there's peer conflict in your room? What do you do when you get that first nasty email from a parent? How do you respond to that stuff? So Believe it or not, he just applied to be in the cohort program. So now he wants to become an administrator. I'm smiling ear to ear because it's I've seen him grow. It's been a cool thing. And the district is very lucky to have him, and I mean that. He coaches and he does everything for us.
Thank you. Another one, have you used, developed, or revised a personnel evaluation system for certified personnel or for non-certified personnel?
Yeah, lucky, believe it or not. I was here my first year, and we're going through the evaluation process, and we were using a program. I don't want to trash the program. We weren't using a very good program, okay? And it actually made everyone's life more difficult. It made the teacher, it made the evaluator. We were losing documents. We didn't know where to go. And I actually asked for permission from Dr. Wilson at the time. Like, because she was a part of the evaluation committee, can I go out and look for something new? And she said, oh yeah, sure, no problem. And so I went out and I found Teachscape. And I did a lot of the back work. I met with some of the guys and did some conference calls. And we implemented Teachscape now 3 years ago. Is that about right? It has made everyone's life easier. It's made the teacher's life easier. It's made the evaluator's life easier. It's really improved how we communicate through the evaluation system. There's timelines, there's calendars. You're no longer looking for dates. It's not one-stop shop, but now you can do professional development through Teachscape. So everything is there, and it's something that I'm prideful of, because when you try and bring anything new to a district, especially to a teaching staff, you want to make sure that they understand why you're doing it. You're not doing it because of a sales pitch. You're not doing it because you saw it at a conference. You're doing it because their life is going to become easier, because we want to make sure that they're spending the most time in their classrooms and not having to fidget through a system or an evaluation system. So I think that's been great for the Timberline. I believe Hampstead's about to use it, or did you start this year? This year, yeah.
Thank you. What have you done to ensure that students from all levels of ability and a variety of cultural backgrounds will succeed in school?
This is a little bit of a passion of mine. I think that I could fly my flag a little bit on what I've been working with the staff at the middle school is understanding the differences. And we have a huge gap in our communities between lower socioeconomic and higher socioeconomic, and understanding that they're all in the same classrooms. And I've used examples before, not only with the grad classes I teach, but with my staff, that you have to understand. It goes back to the forming of the relationships, but just an example, as we're getting ready for February break. We have to be understanding that as a teacher, you can't say, oh, where's everyone going? Because someone might be going to Disney World and someone might not be going anywhere, and then that has an impact on both children's lives. So it has been my goal this year for people to get to know those kids and have a better self-awareness of when you're working with those students, whether it be math, science, social studies, unified arts, whatever it may be, and just understanding that when they're there, everyone is equal, and you need to treat everyone as equal, and you need to understand that you can't judge them for what they're wearing if they've been wearing PJs for the same day or they have a new outfit on every other day. We have to understand that when they're in that classroom, that everyone has fair and equal access to their education, and we need to provide that and garner the trust of the parents and the community that we are treating their children respectfully and understanding that we're doing what's best for everyone.
Thank you. What's the most challenging part of budgeting for you?
It's finding that right number that the community can accept as responsible, at the same time understanding that we will be able to provide everything needed for students. It goes back to that nasty conversation we started with. Every year will be a challenge of proving or providing what we need to do and why we need to do it. We do our best, specifically at the building levels. I know me and Mr. Woodworth, we crunch numbers every year, and it's crazy to think how early we have to do it. We start planning for 1920 in September of the year we just got back. So we're trying to project pullouts or special education or enrichment or all those projections. We're really trying to make calculated decisions to bring in a responsible number to the public, as well as the humans that are involved. The teacher contracts and the humans are the most important in education. It's not the fancy tools and the technology, it's the teachers that are going to be with the students. All the research shows smaller class sizes, I don't need to go down that path, but You got to be able to find that appropriate number that the taxpayers understand that through our budgeting process, building level, budget committee, school board, that we're putting a proper number on the ballot for them to vote in March.
Thank you. What's your greatest achievement?
Life? Life is my family, man. That's it. It's my wife, it's my kids. That's it. I tell everyone you get one life and do what you can, but those kids are it for me and my wife. So if we're talking about life achievement, it's them. I'm very lucky. Everyone tells me, by the way. Very lucky, and I understand that. Professionally, I want to make a difference. And, I get knocked sometimes for the inexperience, and I understand it's totally acceptable. And I always use the word, years experience doesn't always equate to success, and I don't want to go down the sports analogy of things like that, but since I'm a hockey guy, Sidney Crosby, he was 18 when he came in the league. He was pretty good at 18. Where I am today, I want to make a difference, and I want us, and not just Timberlane Hampstead, but I want us to be forward-thinking. In education, we're so reactionary. We're so reactionary to what happened, what occurred, instead of being proactive. And I want to be someone that we become proactive, and we're thinking ahead of people. And and we're comparing ourselves. Massachusetts, we have a neighboring state that's really good at things. I want to have a difference. I want to make sure our kids are getting the best thing that they can to provide them. And whether it's higher ed or trades, I know Hampstead has the opportunity to go to Pinkerton, which is great, and our kids have Salem and Pinkerton. Trades are great. I could really use an electrician right now, and those are the things that we need to be providing. It's equal opportunity for all students. So if I'm going to hang my hat on achievement, it's continuing to push the limits on what we do and how we do it, and not saying, I know Dr. Metzler and all of them, I get on their nerves because I'm always bringing ideas and continuing to challenge what we're doing.
Thank you. How would you engage students, parents, as active participants in their children's education?
Those are we love that, right? We love parents that want to be invested. We love the ones that show up at open house and have the parent-teacher conferences, and then they yell at me because they're only 8 minutes long, and those are the ones we want. We want them there because that makes our job easier. We want the ones that communicate, that says, hey, Mike had a bad day today. Just understand when he walks through the door. We love that open communication. It makes everyone's life better. It makes the parent feel supported by us. It allows us to do our job better within the school system. It allows us to support the student if they're having a good, bad, indifferent day, whatever it may be. I sell that all the time. I don't. If I have a problem with my Jeep, I don't go to the Jeep website and tell them everything they're doing wrong. I contact Jeep and I set up a meeting and I try and fix the things that are going on. That's what I tell parents. Just contact us. I'd say we have a pretty good success rate of that. Once we know the problem or know the issue or know the concern, it's that open communication. At the SAU level, I think that's even more important. Whether you're contacting us about a student or whether you're contacting us because you have a concern with, I was talking to Ms. Marino the other day, there was a concern with the flashing light in Sandown. I know that was going off because the time changed. Those are all important things, and it goes back to the open door policy.
Thank you. Describe your attention to detail.
If you've been in my office, you would know my attention to detail. My pens are in a place. My chair is pushed in. I will know if someone's been in my office when I leave and when I get back. But that is a little bit of a problem. I guess we could go back to issues you need to improve upon, but it helps me in my career. I take great pride in attention to detail, and it goes back to being a player or a coach or whatever you're doing. It's a representation of your name. My dad, growing up, whose name is on that mailbox? It's not, don't talk about me about anyone else. Talk to me about you and your name, and that's what you need to be proud of. So everything that I do is my name on the mailbox. Everything, and I'll talk to my team or and decisions are going to be made, and I say, remember, at the end of the day, if there's a problem, they're not calling you, they're calling me. So we need to make sure that we have everything squared away, and all that attention to detail is important. You don't want to be lazy and relax, or attention to detail is good.
Is there any area of school management which presents a special challenge for you?
Yeah, an area of growth that I've had to improve upon, and I spoke to it in the interview, is human resource with Nancy, and it goes back to my heart and my rock. That scenario, when someone would, an adult or a professional would go to the doctor for a broken pinky, and they'd be like, I'm returning tomorrow. I'm like, okay, great, we missed you, come back in, that type of stuff. And Nancy's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Where's the doctor's note? Where's the areas that we need to help them? All that type of stuff. I made a joke in the interview process that, I wore a bracelet there that said, what would Nancy say? Because there was more that went on with adults than I was aware of as an assistant principal, because that was all to the principal. So once you're in that seat and you're in that role, you understand that a doctor visit there or an accommodation there for whatever it is. So human resource, I've come a long way to now, examples, if a teacher's feeling sick, they're like, no, I'll tough it out, I'll be all right. And I'm like, no, you're going home. Well, no, you're going home. Go home, we'll figure it out, we'll feel better, and go from there. So that's been something that I've been working on.
Mike, one last question before your, excuse me, Mr. Flynn,
Yeah.
Before your closing remarks. How would you initiate curriculum change?
Yeah, so I was part of the initial curriculum change here 6 years ago when I was hired as the dean, and we did something insane in Timberlane, and we decided to try, well, we did, for the record, we've accomplished it, but we started the rewrite of everything in the district K to 12. So I was part of that initial overhaul of evaluating where we are, what we needed to do, and where we were going to go. And that has been a long, since I see a lot of teachers nodding, it's been a long process. But at the end of the day, it's better for everyone involved, students, teachers, parents, it's all out there. Continuing that, or working with Hampstead, it's important to understand that curriculum is a foundation for how we educate. It doesn't drive our instruction. I always say that. We're not going to go into a classroom and tell you how to teach, but we're going to set some expectations on what you need to be educating the youth of America and what they may be doing. So as the assistant superintendent, I think it's a part of that, using those people in place that are much smarter than me in the curriculum area, and empowering them to make sure that we're doing what's best for kids. I think the greatest thing we have going right now with those documents is we continue to say it's a living document, right? So if something new, or you think of something different and you approach us and you say, this is what I want to do, we open up the document, we edit it, and we move on. So curriculum is an important part of the process in any school district, and I'm very proud of what we've done at Timberlane, and I've only heard great things about Cindy and what she's done over there for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. 5 minutes if you want to give some closing remarks.
Sure. It's cheesy and it's cheesy and lame. Hey, look at that, I'm starting to mess up now. I just want to thank everyone in this process. I came here 6 years ago. I remember sitting in front of the board shaking. I felt I was going to pass out when I went for that position. And through my time here, the connections and the people that I've met, I've valued immensely. I've appreciated my time at Timberlane, and I'll say it, if this works out or it doesn't work out, I am ecstatic that I'm still invested in that district. I want to thank my staff at the middle school. Anytime you tell people you're looking somewhere else, typically doesn't go over well. And it has caused disruption now for about a month. Not a lot of what ifs and things like that. I just have been overwhelmed by the people and your ability to be flexible with me through this process. The Hampstead community members that have spent time, I appreciate you guys. You guys do a lot of amazing things there. And in closing, I have enjoyed this. It's been something that I want to be a superintendent someday. That's a fact. I've said that to anyone that I've ever spoken to. So this has opened my eyes on the process that it takes, and the preparation and the lost sleep and the inappetite of this. I've appreciated the grind. It's been a challenge for me, and I really mean it when I say thank you to everyone that has helped support me throughout this this process.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn.
All right. Thank you.
So I want to thank everyone. This concludes the public forum for meeting these assistant superintendent candidates. I also want to thank the district for inviting me to participate. And I also want to thank Kathy Belcher. Special thanks to Nancy and Melissa for streamlining all the questions. And finally, I want to extend my best wishes to the search committee and the SAU board in the weeks to come. You have a difficult job to selecting our next assistant superintendent. So thank you very much, everybody.